Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 81 Urgent Mission. It is late autumn on Black Rock Island, the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting longer. Often the sun sets and twilight closes before you even notice the passage of time. For poor civilians, the time during the day has become shorter, but the work has not become less, forcing them to seize their time even more. However, at least at this moment, it was just afternoon. There's still a lot of time before nightfall, so there's no need to rush. On Palm Street, in the courtyard of a two-story villa, a black carriage slowly stopped. Arthur put away his riding crop, got out of the car and came to the back to help Renee carry the ingredients he had just purchased. Although Renee can't lift it by herself, she will feel bad if he doesn't help. Moreover, although the master treats him and Renee no differently on the surface, in fact, Renee's status is obviously higher than his, and he needs to go to Renee for any expenses he needs to pay on weekdays. Although Renee is just a maid, she is actually more like a housekeeper. Sister. Demi heard the sound of the carriage and ran out of the house. She grabbed a big bag full of vegetables before Arthur. Demi, have you finished recognizing the characters today? Renee gave Arthur some of the dishes, then picked up her own portion and asked as she walked. We've all met. Demi is very smart. Demi said proudly, holding up the bag. Renee smiled, freeing a hand to touch her head. Arthur walked behind silently. There was no expression on his face. But if you look closely, you will find that his complexion, which was once tortured and numb like a statue, seems to have softened a bit and is not as gloomy as before. As he approached the door, Arthur suddenly had an idea for some reason. He stopped for a moment and looked back at the yard behind him. What comes into view is the neatly tended grass, and the transplanted fruit trees are at the moment when they are full of fruit. Although there are not many flowers in bloom, they can remind people of the appearance of spring. If you see it every day and all the time, you will not feel it as new and it will be difficult to detect changes. But there will always be a moment when you suddenly wake up. It turns out that everything is completely different. Bang! The door of the room was pushed open by Renee. Arthur was also awakened, came to his senses, turned his head and continued to follow silently into the house. He didn't know how to describe his feelings. But he did what he did most, silently praising the great Master Colin in his heart. At the same time, he selfishly made a small extravagant hope. He hoped that life could continue like this and that he could always be his master's groom. After entering the house, I didn't take a few steps. Master. Renee paused briefly and greeted the handsome young man in front of her with Demi. Master. Arthur also greeted quickly. Well, have you just come back from purchasing ingredients? Colin smiled at them, and then said to Renee, make dinner more generous. Then he leaned over and pinched Demi's little face, then continued walking towards the master bedroom. He is in a great mood now. More than 3 months. He has persisted for more than 3 months. For 3 months, he meditated for at least 15 hours every day, and the rest of the time was not wasted, but he continued to practice witchcraft. Under such an extremely fulfilling arrangement, the passage of time seems to have become blurred. 3 months even feels like only 1 day has passed. If it weren't for the progress on the gold paper increasing every day and the scenery in the yard changing all the time, he would have thought that time might still be stuck in the past. However, after this, he was finally able to return to a somewhat normal routine. Because, just now, the progress of the second limit breaking circle meditation method finally reached 100/100ths. Prior to this, as early as half a month ago, the progress of the wizard level on the gold paper had reached the limit first. The rest of the witchcraft, including the production of photo crystals, are also beyond the limit. It can be said that everything is ready, all it needs is to advance. Colin climbed up the stairs. To be on the safe side, he planned to go back to the bedroom and take a nap first, and then advance to the next level when he was energetic and refreshed. Pushing open the bedroom door, he breathed out softly, cleared his mind, and sat quietly by the bed for a while. After a while, the excitement subsided and fatigue came back. Colin took off his coat and prepared to lie down on the bed. He stood up, opened the door, and asked doubtfully. Colin frowned slightly, put on his coat, and followed Renee to the first floor. In the hall, the steel-armored guards were already waiting quietly. Lord Colin. Seeing him coming downstairs, the guards rushed to greet him and greeted him in a deep voice. Yeah. Colin nodded and asked, what happened? Sir. The guard raised his head and glanced at Renee beside him, hesitating. Master, I'll prepare dinner for you first. Renee left knowingly. Yes. Colin nodded slightly, and after Renee walked away, he turned to the guard and said in a deep voice, "Say it." The guard leaned over and saluted, then straightened up and said quickly and clearly, "Sir, Lord Flower ordered, urgent mission." He handed the envelope in his hand to Colin. Colin took it and turned it over in his hand to look at it. The envelope was the most ordinary craft paper envelope, overall brown, with a moon-patterned wax seal printed on it. The seal is complete and has not been opened yet. There is a faint fluctuation of magic power coming from it. Colin understood. Lord Colin, Lord Flower ordered you to check it as soon as possible after receiving it. The guard on the side added. I understand. He looked up at the guard and asked, "Is there anything else?" The guard shook his head, said goodbye to him and left. Colin returned to the study, took the envelope in his hand, converted a ray of mental fluctuations from the original version of the circle meditation method, and touched the fire seal on the envelope. Laugh. The seal was like butter in a pot, melting instantly and turning into a red-black liquid, which was gradually absorbed by the cowhide envelope. After a while, after the craft envelope completely absorbed the sealing liquid, Colin slowly opened the envelope. Take out the letter paper inside and throw it aside. He unfolded the envelope and laid it flat on the table. The red and black text is very short, with only a few keywords: a euro. At the second intersection of Thorn Street, at 6 o'clock in the evening, we will arrive in secret. Pay attention to the disguise. After Colin carefully noted down the time and place, he burned the brown paper and the letter paper he had just thrown aside to ashes. He tapped his fingers lightly on the brown-red desk surface, thinking quietly. The inspection office follows the previous notification model of the guard team. The contact between senior apprentices such as Flower and Lord Hongyun is usually through a fixed communication which formation. But for them, usually, if there is any notice, it is mainly conveyed by the guards orally or with documents. Secret messages like this would only appear in particularly important operations. When he was in the guards, he had known about it, but he had never seen it. Crack. He took out the metal pocket watch and opened it. It is now past 4 in the afternoon, and there is only more than an hour left before the time agreed in the secret message. Colin frowned slightly. The thorny street is a slum further away. It takes at least half an hour to get there. If you pretend to be walking, it will take even longer, probably at least more than an hour. The tasks notified by secret messages are very important. If you fail to arrive in time, you will be severely punished afterwards. He sighed slightly, walked out of the study, and gave instructions to Renee, who was cleaning downstairs. There's no need to make dinner, Renee. Now bring me some bread. Okay, master. Renee was slightly startled, raised her head and responded, turning around and walking towards the kitchen. Colin pressed his eyebrows. Time is tight, so I may have to wait until the mission comes back before I can advance. The time required to advance to advanced sorcerer apprenticeship varies from person to person and depending on the meditation method. Generally speaking, it takes at least half an hour. If you choose to advance now, it will be too hasty and it is easy to fail at both ends. After hastily eating the bread, he packed up his equipment and prepared to go out early. Walking down the stairs, opening the door, he glanced at the yard. Different from the mess when they first moved in, now under Renee's care, although it can't be said to be very exquisite, it can at least be considered in order. He looked at the second limit-breaking circle meditation method on the gold paper in front of him, which had reached its limit, with a calm expression on his face, and comforted himself again. €1 advancing is a big deal after all, and €S not easy to rush. And €S already getting late, it will take me almost an hour to get there. €1. As he took steps, he raised his eyes to look at the sunset in the distance. The next second, he seemed to think of something, was slightly startled, and hurriedly turned around and returned to the meditation room. The days are now short and the nights are long, and around 5 o'clock, the sun will completely set. Previously, in order to satisfy the secret message's request to go covertly, he originally planned to go there on foot. But in this case, time is very tight. But if he waits until it gets dark later, he can use the agility technique and the speed of the Great Knight to quickly attack. I think it only takes 20 minutes at most to reach the thorny street. In this case, he has time to advance to the advanced wizard apprenticeship. Asterisk. Night falls. It's almost 6 o'clock in the evening. The seabirds have returned to their nests, and the moon has not yet risen from the sea. There were no stars or moon in the deep sky, only black clouds drifting. Cough, cough, cough. In a low, damp shack, a sick fisherman was coughing. Then there was a rustling sound, which seemed to be too uncomfortable. He sat up in the dark, ready to find some water to drink. But suddenly, a black shadow flashed from the window outside the shack. The fisherman was startled and subconsciously rubbed his eyes. On the deserted dark street, Colin was wearing black and running recklessly. The agility technique combined with the physical fitness of the ultimate knight allows his speed to reach extraordinary levels. After another while, he gradually slowed down. We are almost to the thorny street. After a while, he came to the location designated by the secret message, paused, and walked toward the dark corner next to it. A large circle of apprentices had gathered there. There were many unfamiliar faces, all wearing school badges. Could it be that he came down from the mountain? Colin speculated secretly. However, the leader was an acquaintance Regana. Colin greeted her silently and walked to stand among the apprentices in front of her. Compared to 3 months ago, Regina looked much better, and a black cat was lying quietly on her left shoulder. It appears to be a new black cat, and it's not Maggie. Colin looked at it and speculated with some uncertainty. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Regina glanced around at the apprentices in front of her, then slowly spoke in a low voice. I'll make a long story short, in Blackstone City, there are hidden cultists of the Flesh Thorn sect. They are trying to summon evil gods and destroy the island. In addition, the Shi Yuan gang and the Perka gang in the city have also been bewitched by the Flesh and Thorn cult and have fallen into the embrace of the evil god. Quote. After a long period of investigation, the Lap wizard has determined the location of the ceremonial altar of the Flesh and Thorn cult. Tonight, Wizard Lapu will lead Master Hongyun and other top apprentices to completely eradicate the Flesh Thorn cult and the corrupt Shi Yuan gang and Perka gang. Quote. Having said this, she paused for a moment to give the apprentices time to react. Colin's face remained calm, but he was a little shocked in his heart. Although Regina said it in an understatement, the process behind it would definitely not be that simple. He inexplicably thought of Flower's reassuring words 3 months ago. Unexpectedly, in a place where he couldn't see, the school had already reached this point quietly, just waiting to be wiped out together tonight. Of course, it won't be our turn on the frontal battlefield. Regina continued, our goal in this mission is to guard the intersections we are responsible for and prevent anyone from escaping. She paused for a moment and then emphasized, as long as you are not a member of the school and want to escape, don't be soft. You must not let anyone go. Colin's expression turned stern. This sentence undoubtedly meant that there would be basically no living people left in the area surrounded by them. Next, I will assign the intersections you are each responsible for. Regina continued. If you look down from the sky at this time, you can find that under the cover of night, with the Thorn Street as the center, there are several groups like Regina gathered by many wizards in a circle. These groups spread in the next moment, divided into many small points, connected into lines, and surrounded the entire area. Somewhere at the intersection, Colin exhaled slightly. Autumn nights are not as warm as summer, but a little cooler. Cough, cough, cough. The fishermen not far away were still coughing and seemed to be unable to sleep due to pain. Colin's face was expressionless, hidden in the shadows. The intersection he was assigned to was right at the shack he had passed before. The breeze blew by, fluttering the corners of his black clothes. If you ignore the annoying cough, the night should be comfortable and quiet. It won't be as cold as winter, nor as hot as summer, it's also a little different from spring, with a richer and longer meaning. Colin silently called out the golden paper to calm the faint restlessness in his heart. Before coming, he had successfully advanced. It took less time than he thought, only half an hour. But after the breakthrough, it took him half an hour to adapt before he barely returned to normal. The mental fog is both a hindrance and a refuge. This is a sentence from the overview booklet. Only after he advanced did he truly understand the meaning of this sentence. Distortion Distortion. Look around, no matter where you are, no matter which corner. Everything you can see is a mess of twisted gray-black strange floating objects. If you observe carefully, you can find that these gray-black floating objects are constantly squirming like living creatures. If you observe more carefully, you can see dense black spots like insects through the translucent dim black light. Colin raised his arms. Dense black spots were coming towards him in a steady stream, but they were firmly blocked by the imperceptible spiritual light on the outer layer of his skin. This is the barrier formed by humanity and knowledge after advancing to a senior apprenticeship. Colin raised his head and looked at the shack not far away. By the window facing him, he could see a figure wrapped in countless dirty black spots. Cough cough. The figure coughed violently again. He looked extremely ill, but those black spots were still resisted by a layer of light white mist outside his skin. That a Euro's mental fog. To a certain extent, in the face of these filthy black spots, the mental fog may be more tenacious than the aura on his body. After all, if you are invisible, you cannot be harmed. He wasn't worried about these abnormalities, they didn't last long. The specifics vary from person to person, but generally speaking, it will gradually disappear within half a month at most. Later, when you advance to become a formal wizard, it will appear again, but by then, this state can be turned on or off at will. The moon gradually rose and time passed quietly. The fisherman stopped coughing and fell asleep quietly. Colin is like a sculpture, standing still and waiting. Until a certain moment a euro. The sky in front of him looked like meteorites and stars falling. Dazzling light bursts out. An indescribable orange ball of light suddenly fell towards a certain area. Chapter 82 White Crystal Necklace. Swish a euro. The entire Black Rock City was lit up, not just daylight, but better than daylight. Boom. Immediately afterwards, a deafening explosion came accompanied by air waves, blowing the broken hair on Colin's forehead. His heart seemed to be squeezed and released, and he breathed out softly. The action has begun. Ah. It was at this time that the surrounding people were awakened by the loud noise as if water droplets splashed into the oil pan. From the distant fire, screams, curses, and babies crying suddenly came like a surge. Laugh. Colin withdrew his gaze, followed the request, and promptly lit up the bright crystal with the lanyard that Regina distributed to them, then jumped lightly and hung it on the branch of the big tree behind him. A bright light instantly illuminates the entire intersection. Like a chain reaction, the same soft white light came from the intersections on his left and right. In an instant, a circle of light lit up in the area centered on the thorn street. Some of the apprentices hung bright crystals on trees like him, some tied them to the top of wooden sticks and inserted them into the ground, and some hung them directly on their bodies. At first, Colin originally wanted to hang it directly on his body. He still remembered that he had used this trick when he was in the wizard leadership. But thinking about it carefully, I feel that it is inappropriate. Such a strange move is only effective in close combat. Doing this under the current circumstances is undoubtedly pointing your direction to the enemy and making you a target. After hanging up the bright crystal, he flashed his eyes, took out the cone bomb, silently stepped back a few steps, and disappeared into the shadows behind. After he did all this, only then did the people nearby gradually react to the huge changes. Unlike the people at the place where the fire broke out, they seemed to be more silent. Only babies who were ignorant of the world would cry loudly and unscrupulously, but they would usually calm down quickly with the comfort of their parents. Except for the baby crying, others were just whispering and whispering with their family members. These sounds are low and weak individually, but together they are very noisy. With his strong eyesight, Colin could see many figures emerging from the windows of the stacked shacks in front of him. The nearest fisherman's shack is no exception. At the dilapidated mullioned window made of wooden sticks, a middle-aged man with a weathered face was peeking out. He looked at the bright light coming from the direction of Colin, his heart was full of panic, and he even forgot to cough. But he hesitated again and still did not rush out of the house. Past experience taught him that at this time, going out was the worst option, although staying at home wasn't much better. But he only has this choice. He can only choose to believe that the omnipotent wizards will solve the danger as they did in the past. After all, Blackstone Island is just a small island. If any huge danger really happens, he won't be able to escape. The sea is even more dangerous. If the danger is minor, as long as it doesn't affect you, you can't run around. Black Rock City has a curfew. As an ordinary person, night falls. If you are still wandering around the city and encounter patrolling guards or wizards, even if you don't die, you won't be much better. It is even more dangerous to run outside the city. If you encounter monsters, you will die. If you encounter strange things, you will die. If you encounter ghosts, you will die. If you encounter ferocious beasts, you will die. As ordinary people, they are too weak. If they lose the blessing of the wizard, they will be just candles in the wind and will eventually be wiped out. Colin withdrew his gaze, not paying much attention to the shadows by the window, and turned his head to look at the street quietly. What he mainly needs to deal with is the cultists and gang members who will break out from the frontal battlefield later. According to Regina, peak apprentices like Lord Hongyun will try their best to intercept mid to high level apprentices in frontal battlefields. In other words, what they need to deal with are mainly enemies below the intermediate level. Of course, it is difficult to judge the level of a wizard until the mental fog dissipates. In other words, under normal conditions, it is difficult to distinguish between intermediate apprentices and junior apprentices. As for the specific realm of a wizard above the intermediate apprentice level, observers can only accurately judge the specific state of the wizard by turning on his current, super sense, state. In other words, only the lap wizard has the ability to accurately judge the specific realm of intermediate and above wizards. Therefore, perhaps with the help of lap wizards, it would be difficult for senior apprentices to slip through the net. But there is a high probability that a few intermediate apprentices will be missed. Regina, the weaker senior wizard apprentices, has been waiting behind them. After seeing the signal, they will rush to support. At a glance, there was not a single figure as far as the eye could see. Colin did not take it lightly. He was standing on the huge mango tree behind him, hiding his body among the lush green leaves of the mango branches, holding several cone bombs in his hands. The height of nearly 4 meters gave him a wide field of vision and a panoramic view of the intersection in front of him. His place is not close to the thorny street. In addition, the cultists on the frontal battlefield may need reaction time. It is estimated that it will take some time for the fleeing crowd to arrive. As for the possibility of failure on the frontal battlefield, he never thought about it. The first one was undoubtedly the orange ball of light released by the Lapu wizard, and he still has lingering fears. Although I didn't get close enough to see it, I could tell by the power and the aftermath. He didn't think any ritual altar could survive such an attack intact. There was an explosion of light in the peripheral vision. Colin subconsciously raised his head. In the distant Thorn Street, at the same position just now, another dazzling light suddenly erupted. Blazing white light spread out in all directions, like the sun rising to illuminate the surroundings. He squinted his eyes slightly and could vaguely see a gray-robed figure floating in the air. Boom! The shock wave came, just as powerful as before. But Colin was a little uneasy. A surprise attack is all about one fatal move, if the initial ball of light had already laid the dust. The situation on the frontal battlefield may be somewhat different from what he expected, but no matter what, it seems that he should still be in an advantage now. He jumped slightly, stood on another branch, and looked towards the direction of Wizard Lapu. Crack 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 a euro. Thorny Street. The wooden huts below were whining as the flames licked them. Next to him, a cultist who was touched by the same stubborn flames like gangrene was screaming. After a while, it turned into coke. Lapu was standing quietly in midair, seeming to be searching for something. Around him, under the encirclement and suppression by Hong Yan and others, the cultists were screaming in despair. In the alleyway not far away, Bishop Oman had a calm face, his black witch robe was in tatters, and his body still had some charred and broken marks. He was running away with a blood crystal in his hand. Tang! A wall of flames that looked like substance suddenly appeared in front of him. The Bishop of Oman did not dodge and rushed straight past. A bloody shield emerged from his skin, blocking the power of the flames. After passing through the wall of flames, the bloody shield was obviously much darker. As if he realized that his trace had been locked, he simply stood up from the ground, floated in midair, and quickly flew forward. Wizard Lap looked cold and waved the wand in his hand. A light blue fireball the size of a human head headed straight for Oman. The Bishop of Oman picked the right time and prepared to pause slightly to avoid the fireball. But before he could take action, the light blue fireball suddenly exploded 1 meter away from him, expanding and spreading into an oval ball, covering him. Laugh. When the bloody shield came into contact with it, it actually made a hissing sound. Amon's forward body paused for a moment, and a look of fear flashed across his face. Your Majesty Bishop. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly jumped out from below, actively threw itself into the blue flame ball, and tried its best to push Amon out. After doing this, the figure turned into a ball of flame in an instant and let out a shrill scream. Bowen cultists. Amon murmured. He should have taken this opportunity to escape. But he sighed slightly, turned around and stopped where he was, confronting Lapu, who was not far away. But Lapu didn't give him a chance to breathe at all. Endless flames hit his shop. Seeing this, Amon gave up his intention of using words to delay time. They and Lap were incompatible and had nothing to talk about. What's more, in battle, the opportunity is fleeting and the attention is not enough, so how can you find time to talk? While avoiding Rap's attack, he observed Rap. Lapu stood quietly in midair, wearing an ordinary gray robe with a plain expression. But the attack fell like a sudden rain, extremely sophisticated, leaving no room for survival. Amon had to admit that he underestimated this old wizard. Pooh. His lips moved. It started out as a low murmur, but the final sound seemed to come out like a tearing voice from his throat. Then, he stopped completely and shouted angrily, "Foolish lamb." At the same time, he crushed the bloody crystal in his hand. Click. Lapu raised his eyebrows, and a huge orange ball of light shot out. A dazzling light burst out. Boom. Euro. Ah. At a certain intersection, a cone projectile the size of a knuckle was fired silently from a mango tree. Phew. The junior wizard of the Chi Yuan gang who rushed towards him was torn apart like a rag bag, blood mixed with internal organs spilled all over the floor, steaming up in the slightly cool night. Colin looked behind him carefully for a moment, and when he saw no one there, he withdrew his gaze and turned his head to look into the distance. This is the third time I have used such a powerful attack. He stared at the fire in the distance, felt the shock wave coming, and thought to himself. At this time, a black ball of light shot towards his position on the mango tree. Colin's expression remained unchanged. He bent his legs slightly, jumped to the side, and easily dodged. At the same time, he raised his hand and fired a hollow point cone bullet. Phew. Before he landed, a scream came from the shadows in the distance. It was at this time that the black ball of light hit the mango tree, making a corrosive sizzling sound. Amid this sizzling sound, the screams in the shadow gradually became weaker and disappeared. After advancing to the advanced apprentice level, due to the bonus of the realm, the speed limit has been exceeded once. Coupled with the extraordinary reaction brought by the ultimate knight, an attack like this that is not fast can never hit him. Colin waited for the black balls on the mango tree to dissipate, then jumped up to the treetop again. Carefully look at the intersection in front of you. Although the super sensory state after a breakthrough has many disadvantages for senior wizard apprentices, it can also easily lead to pollution and cost. It can be used for observation, but it is very effective. Although it cannot penetrate obstacles, those figures hiding in the shadows have nowhere to hide under the super sense. Since the second bright light broke out, many cultists and depraved gang members have been fleeing here one after another. There are wizards, knights, and ordinary people. But now, without exception, they all turned into broken corpses lying on the ground in front of them. After standing on the mango tree and observing carefully to make sure that there was no human figure in the field of vision for the time being, Colin adjusted his position and prepared to observe the situation at the distant fire again. Although he was very enthusiastic about killing here, it actually had little effect on the overall battle situation. The real outcome still depends on the Lap wizard. Booza Euro. Just when he pushed aside the leaves and looked towards the fire, a high-frequency hum sounded like nails scraping against a blackboard. Colin frowned slightly, suppressing his discomfort. He continued to push aside the covering leaves and looked into the distance. All that could be seen was the fierce burning fire and the tiny but unignorable figure of the Lap wizard standing in midair. Blazing fireballs flew out from the hands of the Lap wizard, but the enemy could not be seen opposite him. As if thinking of something, Colin concentrated his attention and looked carefully at the position in front of Wizard Lap. As the focus becomes more and more concentrated, the feeling of embossment on the surface emerges again, just like the dirt is washed away by bluestone. What followed was the same palpitating feeling of fear that was like needle pricks. No, this time it is much stronger than before. Colin pursed his lips tightly, his heart beating violently, stimulated by unfounded fear. In the field of vision, a bloody figure gradually appeared in the empty position. Booza Euro. Colin felt as if his brain had been hit by a heavy object. He felt dizzy and strange murmurs floated in his ears. He is salvation. He is revenge. He is the endless and invisible scarlet mist. Laugh. It was at this time that there was an undetectable sound of friction in the air. As if there were thorns in his back, Colin suddenly woke up from his dizziness and controlled his body to jump under the tree. A translucent sharp arrow shot from where he was just now. After breaking a few thick branches, it shot into the air with unabated force, and the sweeping air flow also blew off large mango leaves. This power has exceeded the scope of intermediate apprentices. Before he could land, another translucent sharp arrow was shot at him. Colin's face was calm, and with a thought, a fireball shot out, colliding with the translucent sharp arrow, and annihilating each other. He landed safely on the ground. Hey! A surprised voice came from the shadow not far away. You are not an intermediate student. Laugh. Before he finished speaking, he felt a sign of danger, his expression changed, and he output the defensive witchcraft on his body to the limit. Ding! The cone bullet collided with the translucent shield, making a crisp sound. The warhead was instantly twisted under the collision, but the remaining kinetic energy still drove it to continue to collide with the shield. The translucent shield was visibly dim, but the cone projectile also lost kinetic energy and fell to the ground. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Ding ding ding. But the next second, in the air in front of him, countless cone bullets were fired at him one after another. It's a pity that the strong protective shield on his body did not last long. It only took a short while before it suddenly shattered. Phew. Without the obstruction of the protective shield, the cone bullet drove straight in, tearing his body apart with huge kinetic energy. The breath of life disappeared instantly, and his broken body fell heavily. Colin's face was dull and he stuffed most of the conical bullets he was holding back into the bag on his waist. After doing this, he stared at the apprentice's mutilated body and frowned slightly. In the supersensory field of vision, the apprentice's body still exudes the light of spiritual mist like that of ordinary people. It stands to reason that after death, the mental fog will quickly dissipate. Moreover, the previous attacks and the strength of the defensive witchcraft. This should obviously be a senior apprentice. How can there still be the brilliance of the mental fog? €. Phew. Colin raised his hand and fired several cone bullets at the apprentice's body again, stopping only when the apprentice's already broken body was shattered into football-sized pieces. He looked again. In the supersensory state, the radiance of those mental fogs is evenly distributed on every corpse fragment. Observe for a while. He noticed that the brilliance of the mental fog shrouding most of the fragments gradually faded. After a while, only the fragments of the chest cavity were left, still shrouded in the light of mental fog. Colin raised his head and looked around carefully. As far as the eye could see, it was empty, not a single person in sight. The civilians in those shacks never showed up at the window again after he killed the first person. Colin hesitated for a moment, turned on all the defensive witchcraft to the maximum, and quickly walked towards the corpse. There was no need to search much, just getting closer, he noticed the white crystal necklace shining on the corpse. Colin turned around, his expression changed, he quickly pulled off the necklace and started to retreat. €. Fireworks to signal retreat. The Lap Wizard is invincible. Or misplaced. €. A large number of thoughts flashed through his mind. He held the white crystal necklace tightly in his hand, quickly came to the mango tree, jumped up, and looked towards the thorn street. Colin frowned and searched carefully. After a moment, a familiar figure in gray robes came into view. After careful observation, he saw that the Lap Wizard did not look injured. He breathed a sigh of relief. It was at this time that shouts came one after another, seemingly conveying news in the most primitive way. After a while, the bishop's power weakened, and Wizard Lap killed the evil bishop with his own hands. Quote. Lap Wizard, the voice continued to repeat. Colin's eyes flickered, he jumped down from the mango tree, and retreated back together with the wizard apprentice beside him. Before leaving, he looked back at the street behind him. In the shack, some ordinary people had already realized what was happening and were running away with their wives and children. Wizard Lap's decision may be correct. The projection of the evil god summoned in this way will not last long. It is undoubtedly the most labor-saving method to use the witch formation to temporarily avoid the sharp edge, and wait for the opponent's strength to weaken before counterattacking. As long as you don't consider the damage caused by the evil god's projection raging in Black Rock City, and don't care about the casualties of civilians. Colin looked calm. As he ran, he glanced at the gray figure of the Lap Wizard who had flown in front of them unknowingly, and sighed slightly. Cough. A strong wind blew across his face, and Rap coughed slightly controlling the speed of his flight in the air. He felt the fatigue coming from his body, and his face became colder. Looking back at the projection of the Lord of Flesh and Thorns who was temporarily trapped in place behind him, he snorted coldly. If it had been 50 years earlier, how could a mere projection have allowed me to temporarily avoid the edge? The expression on his face became more and more indifferent, but he sighed undetectably in his heart. I am getting old after all. Chapter 83 Flame of Revenge. Click. Click. In the thorny street, the invisible scarlet figure broke free from the shackles. Under his great strength, invisible fragments seemed to peel off from his body. This is the power of the great Lord of Flesh and Thorns. After breaking free from the shackles, Amon looked at his now unrecognizable body and silently praised it in his heart. He looked up at the huge shield gradually rising from the wizard's territory in the distance, but he was not in a hurry to pursue it. Instead, he withdrew his gaze and turned around to look around. After a while, he had a thought. Invisible scarlet mist overflowed from his body, sweeping in all directions like tentacles. Faithful believers of our Lord, he said in a low voice. Come to me. I will bring you back to the glory of the Lord. As his voice sounded, the eyes of the surviving flesh thorn cultists and fallen gang members were gradually shrouded in scarlet. They changed directions one after another, came to Amon with fanatical expressions, and accepted the baptism of the invisible scarlet mist like a tentacle. The flesh and blood of the believers rolled and twisted like living creatures, and the magic power in those gang wizards boiled violently and then disappeared. It was replaced by a deep black and red mist. Madman. Ted, the leader of Shi Yuan gang, looked at this scene in the alleyway in the distance and cursed. He didn't expect Amon to be so crazy. If you do this, no matter what the final result is, but one by one of these people, in the end they won't even be able to enter the kingdom of God. It will only become firewood for the power of the Lord of Flesh and Thorns. He retracted his gaze, discerned the direction, and prepared to take the opportunity to escape quickly. Along the street and around the corner, he blended quietly into the crowd of fleeing civilians like water dripping into the sea. He glanced slightly at the ordinary people around him. On the left is a skinny old man. His thin body is no longer as strong as when he was young, and he is already breathing heavily. But he still gritted his teeth and ran as hard as he could, with a fearful look on his face, not daring to fall behind in the slightest. On the left is a group of couples. The man has gray temples, holding a small boy in one hand, and holding his thin wife with the other. The wife was holding an 8 or 9-year-old little girl in her hand. They all looked frightened and ran as fast as they could, even the little girl gritted her teeth and held on. Looking at them, looking at these ordinary mortals whom he never cared about, Ted felt an inexplicable complex feeling in his heart. He once again glanced back at the huge figure with a faint outline in the distance, feeling shocked and fearful in his heart. For some reason, for the first time, he regretted cooperating with the Flesh and Thorn cult. He sighed slightly. It doesn't matter. I will hide in the dark first and wait until they and the Lap Wizard decide the outcome before making any plans. After all, the possession of the evil god's projection will not last long. If the Flesh and Thorn cult wins, the Lap Wizard will die. Then when the projection dissipates, those believers will probably be almost dead. The island will undoubtedly become the world of peak apprentices like them. If it is his turn to take power, then he will definitely drive out these cultists and kill them all. But if the Lap Wizard wins, his expression darkened. If the Lap Wizard wins, staying on the island will only lead to death. He paused briefly, changed direction, and rushed towards the east of the city. At that time, I must take a boat to leave the island to find a way out. Go to Chengdong Marina first. Hiss. A set of scarlet tentacles suddenly attacked from behind him. Ted's expression changed drastically, and several witchcraft radiances instantly blessed his body. But this had no effect at all. The tentacle passed directly through his chest as if it were nothing, and rolled him backwards. Magica euro. The magic is boiling violently. Puff. Ted couldn't help spitting out a mouthful of blood. From the inverted flying perspective, he could see it clearly. The few ordinary people who were next to him just now have been contaminated by the bloody mist brought by the tentacles, showing a terrifying scene of alienation and depravity. Before they could even scream, they suddenly exploded and turned into a ball of blood-red minced meat. As if he noticed something, he raised his arm suddenly. Then I was suddenly shocked. As the magic power boiled away, his own arm gradually became abnormal. Flesh and blood squirm and transform. The originally fair and ordinary arms turned into long and ferocious dark red spikes in the blink of an eye. No, Ida Euro's not just the arms that change. Ted's pupils shrank slightly, his eyes full of fear. Scarlet tentacles brought a monster covered with ferocious blood thorns to Amon's side. The tentacles were released, and the dark red monster stood like a sculpture. Praise be to the great Lord of Flesh and Thorns. A low, fanatical voice came from its mouth. Amon raised his head, a smile appeared on his godlike face. After a while, beside his huge invisible body, a large circle of dark red monsters of different shapes had gathered. The most eye-catching among them are the two figures closest to him, one large and one small. The big monster's body was covered with ferocious blood thorns, and its bloody horns shone like steel. The slightly smaller monster is suspended in midair, with a thin body, and the top of its scepter-like right hand emits a crystal-like bloody light. About there, Amon looked around and pondered. He raised his arm slightly and felt it carefully. His power is still full within you. But he understands. There really wasn't much time left for him. In another hour at most, such abundant power will drop sharply in a short period of time. He needed to hurry up. However, now is not the time. He looked at the wizard leader in the distance again. Before the official attack, he had one more thing to do. Amon retracted his gaze, opened his arms composed of invisible scarlet mist, and thought. Swish a euro. The scarlet tentacles kept retracting from his body, and he returned to his complete majestic appearance. The next second, the red mist gradually spread out from his body. Different from scarlet mist tentacles. The red mist is lighter in color and thinner. It seemed slow, but in fact it surged around quickly, and before long, it spread to the entire Black Rock City. Then, a low, weeping sound came from Amon's body, spreading as the mist continued. Revenge a euro. Revenge. A euro, the Lord of Flesh and Thorns is watching you. He will give you the fire of vengeance. Quote. Go ahead. Go get revenge. A euro please him with a burning heart of vengeance. A euro. The light red mist continues to fill. The world turns scarlet. Help me, Al. A street somewhere. Al's eyes showed confusion and he covered his head. His brain was throbbing with dull pain, and he was frozen in place, with Eileen's screams at the top of his lungs echoing in his mind. What's wrong, Al? The elderly mother beside asked with concern, her wrinkled face full of worry. Nothing, Mom. Al shook his head, paused and glanced around, then asked, didn't you see the red mist? Red mist. Mother was startled and looked around. All that could be seen were orange firelight, collapsed houses, and people fleeing in panic. I didn't see any red mist. She looked back at Al, her face even more worried, and continued to urge, let's go quickly, Al. The wizards have left. We can only survive if we escape far enough until they come back. She picked up the luggage on her back, freed her hands, and dragged Al to continue running for her life. The old woman stepped forward, but the resistance coming from her hands stopped her steps. Al still stayed where he was, with a dull look on his face. Quote. What's wrong with you, Al? She turned back to look at Al and said urgently, if you don't run away, it will be too late. Al, she shouted. But Al always stayed in place, his eyes became increasingly hollow, and a scarlet color gradually emerged from the depths of his pupils. My child, what's wrong with you? The elderly woman was extremely anxious. Seeing that there were fewer and fewer people around her, the uncontrollable panic in her heart made her unable to hold back tears. How on earth did you? Mom, do you remember Ellie? Al lowered his head slightly, interrupted his mother's words, looked at her and asked lightly. The elderly woman was startled and frowned slightly, the grooves on her face appearing deeper. How long has it been and you are still thinking about that girl? She turned her head and looked away. Ta-ta. Footsteps sounded. Where are you going, Al? The woman was stunned, turned back and looked at Al's back in astonishment as he turned away, and shouted. Where are you going, Al? But after she saw Al's appearance clearly, her tone gradually became weaker. Flesh and blood flowed like lava, and on the body like molten wax, a pair of scarlet eyes were breathtaking. I want revenge, mother. The scarlet monster replied in a low voice, his voice like dripping blood. Then, it raised its head and murmured fanatically into the distance. Mom, I saw the truth. A euro, the Lord of Flesh and Thorns is watching me. Quote. Tang. As soon as he finished speaking, the bright yellow flames of revenge rose from his body. Ah! The old woman was so frightened by this strange phenomenon that she turned pale and fell to the ground. Bright yellow light illuminated her face, and the flaming figure reflected in her pupils gradually became smaller. Al gradually moved away with the light of fire. The light disappeared and darkness enveloped the woman again. Idiot! On the street in the distance, Harrington looked in the direction of Thorny Street and cursed in a low voice. He looked around at the miserable situation. His face was not cold, but anger was brewing in his heart. The originally orderly Black Rock City has now become chaotic under the influence of the invisible red mist. Figures ignited in flames can be seen everywhere, killing wantonly and then turning into ashes. He never thought that the Flesh Thorn sect would be so stupid that Rapp would discover the location of the ritual altar. €. Perhaps the plan needs to be considered in the long term. €. With a sigh, he stopped looking and walked towards the house behind him. But soon, he paused for a moment and frowned slightly. Holding his right hand empty, a scepter with dark gold patterns condensed in his hand. After doing this, he raised his head and took a closer look at the thin dark red monster floating in midair that appeared in front of him at some unknown time. Chapter 84 Human Nature. In the wizard's collar shrouded in a translucent shield, Colin, together with a group of wizard apprentices, stood on a high slope near the bottom of the mountain in the wizard's territory, looking at Blackstone City. It was still dark at this time, with dark clouds all over the place, and the sky was starless and moonless, like a piece of pure black silk. On the other hand, in Black Rock City, the rows of gray buildings in the city were flickering with lights. Against the dark earth like the sky, it looked like stars falling. The stars fall to the ground, reflected in Colin's deep light blue eyes. I don't know how many more people are going to die, someone beside him murmured. Colin was startled and turned his head to look over. The person who said this was a brown-haired male wizard with an ordinary and gentle appearance. At this time, he was looking at Black Rock City in trance. Colin looked away. The place where he is standing is not far from the junior apprentice dormitory where he previously lived in the wizarding territory. Or rather, right next door. Once upon a time, he had just come to this world. On that night when the full moon hung high, he looked at the green flames that suddenly lit up at the bottom of the mountain, and once said the same words to the blonde girl next to him as the brown-haired male wizard. I don't know how many more people will die. Colin's face was cold and hard, but his heart was full of mixed feelings. He is not a kind person, and he does not have the great ambition or courage to change the current situation of the world. But he is indeed not an extremely evil person. He cannot destroy humanity and cannot be as unmoved by the passing of these lives as a stone. He may not attempt to save, nor may he be heartbroken over it. But he was still feeling a little down. After all, he has lived in Black Rock City for so long. That gray two-story villa was the first apartment he owned in his life. Although Sister Renee and Arthur were just slaves, they were the people he saw most often in this world. I don't know what happened to them. Colin retracted his gaze, looked up at the lap wizard in midair, moved his steps, and came to a corner. He really can't change anything. There is no attempt to save everything or change the rules of this world. But, if you can, he hopes. I hope that one day, I can finally control my own destiny. It won't be like now, where we can only wait and see and avoid. He found a smooth stone in a corner away from the crowd, and after controlling the effect of the cleaning technique to clean it, Colin sat down cross-legged. On a few stones not far away, a group of resting apprentices were sitting. Some were chatting with each other, some were reading books, and some were meditating to restore their magic power. Colin's face was calm, and except for the slightly remote location where he was sitting, he looked no different from the other apprentices. He glanced around to make sure no one was paying attention to him, then lowered his head and looked at himself carefully. The super-sensible state is still there. Wherever the naked eye could see, those dirty black spots still existed, and they were still coming towards him. But the translucent invisible barrier on his body changed its appearance after breaking through. €s like a mental fog. If he could not clearly feel the essence of this barrier, it would still be the brilliance of humanity and knowledge after becoming a senior apprentice. He will all be deceived. Rubbing the white crystal pendant that he had hung on his chest, Colin understood. This is obviously a witchcraft tool with a camouflage effect. He glanced imperceptibly in the direction of the lap wizard. Perhaps I don't have to worry about being discovered by the lap wizard about his true realm. Before advancing, in fact, he is not too worried that his true realm will be discovered after advancing. To determine the specific state of a wizard, observers need to enter a supersensory state. The only person on the island who has the ability to enter a supersensory state at will is the Lap Wizard. The Lap Wizard is extremely difficult to see. He has been in this world for so long and has only seen it from a distance twice. In addition, senior apprentices who have just advanced can also enter a supersensory state for a short time. But at this time, although it is not the most dangerous moment when advancing, it still requires careful attention. Of course, for him, because he has a profound understanding of meditation methods while maintaining his humanity, the barrier between humanity and knowledge generated through advanced steps is strong enough. So there is not much danger for him at this stage. Even catching a glimpse of the evil god was nothing more than dizziness. Moreover, perhaps because of this, he did not pay any strange price like other apprentices, but he was just not used to the supersensory state. But other advanced people are not as relaxed as him. Usually in the supersensory stage, newly advanced senior apprentices will choose to stay in seclusion. Members of the school usually spend the entire supersensory stage with wizards on the mountain. Therefore, as long as he pays attention on weekdays, he doesn't have to worry about exposing his true state. Of course, there are risks in everything, but you can't stop eating because of choking. This low-key life only needs to be maintained for another 2 or 3 years, or even 1 year. He can then choose a day and legitimately admit that he has made a breakthrough. Although it was fast, by that time, it was no longer shocking. It can only be said that he is gifted and can be called a genius. Being a genius is a double-edged sword. But as of now, the rap school of thought as a whole is biased toward decency and lawfulness. The title of genius here should bring more advantages than disadvantages. The original owner had been a junior apprentice for 10 years, and his basic knowledge was solid enough. It was common for him to suddenly become enlightened one day, and to accumulate a lot of experience. After all, a wizard's talent can never be summed up by just his affinity for magic energy. The ability to learn and understand knowledge, the persistence of human nature, etc. will become more and more important later on. Also, he actually hasn't mastered this white crystal pendant yet. This disguised effect was not initiated by him. On the way to the wizard's territory, when he held the crystal and retreated with the other apprentices of the school, this disguise quietly took effect on him. No magic power supply is required, no spiritual activation is required. Just bringing the white crystal close to the body can automatically disguise the effect of mental fog. Generally speaking, the use of witchcraft requires the cooperation of spirit and magic. The mind is imprinted and given control to turn it on and off. The magic power is responsible for supplying or replenishing energy. Whether to supply or replenish energy depends on whether the witch tool itself has energy storage components. Colin felt the cold touch from the white crystal and thought to himself. No matter how you think about it, the effectiveness of this white crystal pendant should be more than simulating mental fog. Unfortunately, now is not the right time. There were members of the sect all around, and the Lap Wizard was still standing quietly above. Colin suppressed the thought of using magic power to test the white crystal. Slowly closing his eyes, he began to recover his magic power and adjust his condition like other apprentices. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 85. The dust has settled. On an autumn night, the bleak wind brought a coolness. Wizard Lap stood in the air, lowered his head and glanced at the apprentices gathered below. Most of them have recovered their magic power and woke up from meditation. Now we are standing on the edge of the cliff overlooking Black Rock City. Lapu slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at Black Rock City in the distance again. The flames in the city were still burning, but they were much smaller than before. At Thorny Street, Omen's invisible giant figure still stands in place like a sculpture. Under the influence of various performances brought by the flaming figures in the city, the invisible scarlet mist that filled the air became increasingly dense. Lap frowned slightly when he saw this. As a first-order peak wizard who has lived for nearly 300 years, he naturally knows what Amon is doing. It's nothing more than wanting to increase one's own strength. He looked at Amon who seemed defenseless and smiled coldly. Just like the original choice, it still stayed in place, motionless. He didn't take action, nor did he plan to take action. The elaborate ritual altar built by the Flesh and Thorn cult has been destroyed. No matter how Amon enhances the power of projection, the Lord of Flesh and Thorns can only rely on his body to walk in the world. This also means that the power Oman ultimately carries is always limited. As for this upper limit, Rap knew very well that it would be difficult to exceed his strength with the blessing of the witch formation. What's more, no matter how strong Aman is, the duration of the projection possession of the Lord of Flesh and Thorns will not be increased. It just depends on Oman himself. When Aman's soul and body are all burned away, everything will be settled. A Euro Oz for Black Rock City. A Euro Lap looked indifferent. A Euro just rebuild it. A Euro. He was not kept waiting long. Black Rock City in the distance has changed again. The scarlet mist all over the city solidified at this moment, as if time stopped. The crowd was still crying, the flames were still beating, licking the building and making crackling sounds. But the red mist seemed to solidify into amber in another dimension. The next moment, it rolled back like a whirlpool. The flames on those figures who were still shrouded in the flames of vengeance suddenly began to burn violently and accelerating inexplicably. Why, I haven't had my revenge yet. As the red mist swept past, those figures turned into handfuls of ashes. Countless survivors cried tears of joy. Some of them had really hurt the person who turned to ashes in front of them, some had only minor friction with him, and some of them actually didn't even know the flaming figure who came to seek revenge. Thorny Street. Aman took in a breath of intoxication and let out a contented sigh. This scarlet mist was like a tired bird returning to its nest, swirling around him, forming a huge bloody vortex, and then penetrated through his mouth, nose, and skin, and was absorbed by him. After the scarlet mist was completely absorbed, his body that had been standing for a long time finally moved. Aman took a step forward, hugging the dark red monster around him and instantly arrived outside the wizard's territory. Boom. The shops and markets here collapsed and shattered under their unbridled march. Rap. Aman said. His voice was low and reverberant, and seemed to be mixed with some strange noises, making people feel an inexplicable chill on their backs. He took another step and came to the midair outside the witch formation, looking down at the Lap Wizard. Click. Below the Lap Wizard, there was a slight noise. Colin subconsciously looked in the direction of the sound. An apprentice was frowning and raising his right foot, as if he had crushed something. Although the apprentice pretended to be calm, anyone could see his nervousness from his slightly trembling thighs. But no one laughed at him. Because, they're not much better. Colin turned his head and continued to stare at the powerful Aman and his group of monsters in front of him. He glanced away at Aman, who was more than 10 meters tall. At the feet of his huge body, there was also a large group of dark red monsters gathered. The most eye-catching one is the figure standing nearly 3 meters high next to his right foot and covered with ferocious blood thorns. In the supersensory field of vision, the scarlet light it emits is obviously more dazzling than other dark red monsters, and its range is also larger. At first glance, he is not an easy character to deal with. Foolish followers of the evil god. Suddenly, the Lap Wizard above spoke. Colin cast his gaze over. This was the first time he heard the Lap Wizard speak. The voice was steady and slightly hoarse, like rusty iron rubbing against iron. When Aman heard this, he was not angry, but just sarcastically said, "Stupid mortals who don't know the true horrors. Wizards and cultists like them are at odds with each other, and such exchanges have happened countless times. I thought you didn't dare to come over." Wizard Lapu spoke again. But Aman smiled faintly and did not answer. He just waved his big hand and slapped it hard on the translucent shield in front of him. Boom. Rap frowned slightly and clenched his wand tightly to maintain the stability of the witch formation. He originally wanted to use words to delay it for a while longer. After all, the longer time passed, the more advantage it would have for him. But Aman is obviously not stupid. Boom. The bloody energy continuously bombarded the translucent witch formation shield, causing ripples. Seemingly shaky, Wizard Lap relaxed slightly. If it were just this kind of attack intensity, then this battle would have no other outcome. But he didn't take it lightly, raised his hand and waved the wand tentatively. A transparent beam as thick as a bucket shot towards Aman's chest. The bloody mist spontaneously formed a buckler on Aman's chest, successfully intercepting the beam. Rap frowned and gave up the intention of attacking again. These attacks are nothing more than pointless attrition. Unless he uses his full strength to attack, in Aman's current state, these ordinary attacks alone will not be able to cause damage, let alone cause damage, or even consume Aman's energy. Roar. The dark red monsters around Aman also attacked the shield at this time. Bang bang bang. With their large numbers, the noise they create is also astonishing. Rap didn't care. To him, everyone below the official wizard is just an ant. His main focus was still on Amon. There was no emotion on Amon's godlike face, he just kept bombarding the shield. The shield shook like jelly, but there was no hint of breaking. The situation was so deadlocked. The apprentices below seemed to realize that the situation was not as critical as they imagined, or that teacher Rap was indeed as powerful as they thought. In short, after realizing that Amon seemed unable to break through the shield, their expressions became relieved. Colin stared at Amon and his group of monsters who were blocked by the shield not far away. I was also slightly shocked. Previously, a group of monsters in Oman were so powerful in Black Rock City, but now they are firmly isolated from the witch formation. Not far in front of him, the 3-meter-tall monster with spikes all over its body was using all its strength to continuously bombard the shield, showing great power in every move it made. If it were his current defense, if he stood there and allowed it to attack, he would probably be broken through in less than 2 minutes. But such a powerful attack only caused weak ripples in front of the witch formation. Only the attack of Amon's huge bloody figure could make the shield shake violently. Colin's nervous heart gradually dropped. The outcome of this incident may have been decided when the Lap Wizard made a rational and cruel choice to avoid the edge for the time being. In this crisis-ridden world, the Lap Wizard, who has lived for nearly 300 years, is far more powerful and experienced than he imagined. Boom. As if realizing that he was powerless with the shield in front of him, Amon's attacks became more frequent. The power is getting stronger and stronger. Seeing this, Wizard Lap held his wand tightly, but his expression became more and more relaxed. This witch formation of my own was upgraded and transformed based on the Blackstone family, the original rulers of the island. Even if he faced a second-level wizard, he could hold on for at least half an hour. If Amon only has this strength, then it is just a dream to break the witch formation before the projection is over. Just when everyone thought the overall situation was settled. On the mountainside, whoosh, a thin dark red figure was approaching the wizard leader under the cover of night, and the top of its scepter-like right hand emitted a scarlet light. Soon, it merged into the group of dark red monsters like water droplets. It just arrived at the feet of Amon's huge body. Hateful. Amon shouted angrily from outside the shield, as if he knew that his defeat was a foregone conclusion. He raised his arm, and the blood-colored mist quickly gathered toward his fingertips like water, condensing into a small red-black ball the size of a human head. After the ball is formed, it automatically breaks away from the fingertips and flies toward the shield quickly, seemingly slowly. Wizard Lap's eyes narrowed slightly and he increased his magic output again. The translucent shield is visibly solid to the naked eye. Laugh. The black and red ball came into contact with the shield. There was not much movement, just a slight hissing sound. But the shield of the witch formation flickered erratically, being pulled and twisted by the black and red ball. Lapu's expression also became serious. Teacher Rap, a disciple below murmured worriedly. Colin also stared at the small black and red ball not far away that was blocked by a translucent shield, but couldn't do anything. They wizards can only watch the battle here. Even top apprentices like Berkeley have no way to intervene in the current battle situation. The witch formation also relies on magic stone veins as energy, and does not require them to input magic power. Colin looked away and sighed slightly in his heart. The next second, he was slightly startled. In the corner of his super-sensory vision, he caught a glimpse of an unusual dark red monster. It has a thin body, its right hand is in the shape of a scepter, and its scarlet light is the same as that of the bloodthorn monster. It is far more powerful than other dark red monsters. At this time, it was standing at Amon's feet, gradually sublimating, turning into red mist, and blending into Omen's body. In the red mist, you can still vaguely see a flash of gold. For some reason, Colin suddenly felt an unreasonable panic in his heart. His thoughts moved slightly, and the light of witchcraft shone on him. It was at this moment that even Colin's witchcraft glory had not disappeared. A huge scarlet hand passed through the shield as if there was no obstacle and slapped the Lap Wizard. The scarlet palm was as solid as a small black-red ball, with tiny red-black light spots flashing around it, giving it a frightening power. Lapu's expression changed drastically. He didn't bother to explore why the witch formation didn't work, and concentrated on waving his wand to resist. The witch formation shield on the side lost his blessing and could no longer withstand the power of the black and red ball. Click. Shattered like glass. Boom. The black and red ball suddenly exploded. €. Somewhere on a street corner in Black Rock City. Harrington held the scepter with dark golden patterns and stared in the direction of the wizard's leader, his eyes filled with anticipation. Seeing the black and red flames rising up from the wizard's collar as expected, he felt a sense of joy in his heart. €, my efforts for so long have not been in vain. €. Old Lapu. He sneered and murmured in a low voice. €. Blackstone Island will always belong to our Blackstone family. The Blackstone wizard leader will always belong to the Blackstone family, including the wizard formation above. Quote. The black and red flames obscured his vision. He retracted his gaze and turned to look at the black man Haywood beside him. Haywood felt Harrington's gaze on him, and felt a sudden change in his heart. He lowered his head and became more respectful. Phew. But the next second, along with the undetectable sound of wind, he felt severe pain in his heart. A scepter with dark golden lines pierced through his heart. Haywood subconsciously held the dark golden scepter with his big dark hands. Blood spurted out from the gap between the wound and the scepter, instantly staining his hands red. He raised his head and stared at Harrington with disbelieving eyes, his mouth covered with blood foam opening and closing unconsciously. Then, he fell heavily to the ground. Puff. Harrington pulled out the scepter from Haywood's body, waved it gently a few times, and shook off the blood on the spikes at the end. Now that the plan has been implemented, Amon successfully deceived the witch formation with his help. Then there is no need to keep these materials used to study how to hide from the witch formation. Boom. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from behind. Harrington's heart suddenly turned around. Boom, boom, boom. As he turned back, dazzling lights came from behind one after another. He squinted his eyes slightly and looked at the wizard's collar on the top of the mountain, and his expression gradually darkened. The constantly flashing light hit his gloomy face, adding a bit of terror to his already ugly complexion. This iconic light is undoubtedly Old Man Lapu's signature first-level witchcraft, Sunshine Fireball. Harrington's heart gradually sank. You must know that the witch formation is not a rigid thing. The credentials he gave Oman could only give him a chance for a surprise attack. Oman must lay the dust with one blow. Otherwise, when Old Lapu reacts, he can quickly adjust the witch formation, identify him, and defend again. Even if the shield of the witch formation is temporarily broken, as long as the center of the witch formation is not destroyed, Lapu can still receive the blessing of the witch formation, and the translucent defensive shield can be regenerated soon. In this case, if Amon's first blow did not cause critical damage, the longer that time goes by, the greater Rap's advantage will be. And judging from the current situation, this constantly flashing light undoubtedly means €. Oman failed to lay the dust with one blow. Those who believe in gods are indeed a bunch of fools. Harrington put away the dark golden scepter in his hand, no longer lingering, turned around and left with a cold expression. Asterisk. 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 Crack 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 €. The wooden structure of a building not far away screamed in the raging fire. Cough cough. Colin coughed, waved his hand to sweep away the black smoke in front of him, and looked around with his eyes wide open. The wizard leader in front of him no longer looked like a mountain, and everything he could see with the naked eye was burning. Wooden houses, grass, trees, and even the bodies of some dead apprentices. The dormitory area where junior apprentices originally lived is now just a ruin. Crack. Boom. Another building collapsed in flames. The sound of collapse reminded him of the devastating explosion just now. Correct. What about Lap wizards? Colin scanned the sky, but didn't find a single figure. There is no Lap wizard, nor the huge bloody figure. Laugh. Not far away, the sound of fire extinguishing was mixed with the sound of noisy voices. Quickly put out the fire. There's someone injured here. Colin ran in the direction of the sound. Thanks to the protection of a limit-breaking secondary high-temperature tolerance and other defensive witchcraft, he did not suffer any injuries. It was just that I couldn't see clearly what was going on due to the dazzling light just now. But before running 2 steps, he gradually stopped. In the field of vision, a familiar figure in gray robe appeared in midair again. Although the body is small, it cannot be ignored. More to come. Chapter 86 After the War. Wow. Showers were falling in drizzle. The weather on the island is changeable, and the dark clouds last night turned into a short shower near sunrise. In the hall on the first floor of the central castle, Colin stood by the window, watching the remains of the ruins outside covered in a hazy mist by the rain. Thanks to this shower, the flames ignited in the wizarding territory and even Black Rock City gradually extinguished without causing greater damage. Hiss. An apprentice next to him was applying medicine to his wound. Burns caused by flames were not as easy to treat as other conventional wounds. The apprentice's arm was burned and a huge blister was raised. After he popped it, light yellow tissue fluid flowed out. Around him, there were many wounded people like him. Some injuries are more serious, some injuries are less serious. Colin looked away. After the witch formation's protective shield was broken, Colin originally thought that they would form a king versus general situation with Amon's group of monsters. They may even stalemate with each other for a while. But I never thought that the battle would become fierce in an instant. That moment was the climax and the finale. That mountainous area is just the stage for Amon and Lap. They, apprentices, might not even be considered an audience. Colin sighed slightly in his heart. After endless light. When he came back to his senses from the ruins, all he saw were broken walls and dead and injured apprentices. In the aftermath of such a battle, the apprentices are as fragile as those dark red monsters. He doesn't understand. What is the meaning of having these apprentices gathered there? Is it just waiting to be injured by the aftermath of the battle? But soon, he shook his head again. If it develops normally, these apprentices should wait in the witch formation until the projection of the Lord of Flesh and Thorns disappears, and then go out to deal with the remaining dark red monsters and clean up the battlefield. But who would have thought that Amon could deceive the defense of the witch formation, so the battle situation suddenly changed. Colin rubbed the white crystal pendant on his chest through the witch robe and felt inexplicably emotional. Blackstone Island is just a prison after all. If the sacrifice ceremony of the Flesh and Thorn cult was not discovered in advance, but was successfully held, the summoned evil god projection must be stronger. If it is stronger than the upper limit of what the Lap wizard can handle, then these wizard apprentices, no matter where they hide on the island, will eventually die. The only way to survive is probably to escape to the sea, although this seems more like a dead end. €1 perhaps I'd €1's time to buy a boat and learn some necessary witchcraft at sea. €1 Colin thought to himself. With his current strength, going to sea alone might lead to a narrow escape, but it would no longer be a dead end like when he was an intermediate apprentice. If you encounter a truly irresistible danger, going to sea is your last hope. Colin. Berkeley suddenly came closer. Wizard Lap wants to see you. He looked a little tired, but the witch robe on his body was still clean and tidy. Okay. Colin nodded in response, his expression calm and not too surprised. After cleaning the battlefield and helping rescue the wounded, he went to Berkeley to report the vision he saw before Amon broke into the shield, the monster that sublimated into a red mist and merged into Amon's body, and a touch of golden light mixed in the red mist. Before he could leave the island, the Lap school and him both prospered and suffered losses. Such important information should not be concealed. Berkeley nodded slightly and led him through the apprentices to the end of the hall, passing through the gray-black corridor and arriving at the study at the end. Open the door. In front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, the Lap wizard was standing with his back to them. Outside the window is a delicate lawn and several lush trees. It was already approaching sunrise, the sky was slightly dim, the rain had stopped, and a faint trace of rich golden light appeared at the end of the field of vision. Teacher Rapp. Berkeley greeted respectfully. Teacher Rapp. Colin also greeted. As the leader of the school, Wizard Lap is also the common teacher for all of them. Yes. Lapu responded slightly and turned around slowly. Under the gray hood is the face of an ordinary middle-aged man, and his sideburns show that he has white hair. At this time, his face was unnaturally pale, but the witch robe was intact and no injuries could be seen. Describe to me the scene you saw in detail. He walked to the bench behind the desk and sat down, looking at Colin and said. Okay, Teacher Rapp. Colin slowly spoke. The originally dark room gradually became brighter as time went by, and a golden window gradually broke in. If you look up and through the stained glass window, you can see a golden sun rising from the deep blue sea in the distance. The night recedes and dawn has arrived. Well, I understand. After listening to his story, Wizard Lap didn't reveal much emotion, but frowned. Then he ordered them to leave. Walk out of the study and into the long corridor. Your Excellency Berkeley, I will go back to Black Rock City first. Colin turned to bid farewell to Berkeley. Berkeley nodded slightly and watched Colin gradually walk away along the corridor. In the study room, The lap wizard sat back on the bench. The dawn light came through the stained glass window behind him, casting him in shadow. He sighed slightly, adjusted his sitting posture, and relaxed slightly. It was also at this time that the traces of nearly 300 years could be seen in his slightly stooped figure. He gasped slightly. The pain from the abdominal wound consumed his little energy. Wrinkles like vines appeared on his pale face, bags under his eyes drooped, and his forehead was no longer smooth. In just an instant, he changed from a middle-aged man to an octogenarian old man. He took a breath, let out a short sigh, held his stomach, and sat up straight. Those newly created ravines retreated as quickly as an illusion. He looked like a middle-aged man again, but his complexion was even paler. Lifting the palm covering his abdomen, Lapu frowned slightly. The fingers were not stained with blue de euro, a euro. Instead, they were some bloody, slender, bright red meat shreds that were constantly twisting like maggots. Snort. Rap snorted coldly. A ball of flame appeared out of thin air and instantly burned the shredded meat to charcoal. Orange flames also appeared on his abdomen, and the slender flesh strands from the wound turned into charcoal. After doing this, he breathed a sigh of relief, stood up, walked out of the shadows, and came to the bright stained glass window. His face was calm, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Asterisk. 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 Go through the hall and out of the central castle. Colin looked calm as he stepped on the rain-soaked gravel road and moved forward unhurriedly. Tick a euro talk. Raindrops dripped down the green leaves of the trees nearby and shattered on the ground, and the birds began to chirp. There is a unique fresh smell after the rain in the air, just like before. If it were a euro tea for the reminder of the embers of black building debris that can be seen everywhere. No one could have imagined that a battle took place here last night that could affect the fate of hundreds of thousands of people on the island. Arriving at the cliff, Black Rock City at the foot of the mountain came into view. Gray-black buildings are lined up in rows. If you look closely, you can see that many of them have been burned down and collapsed, leaving only ruins. However, the ant-like crowds coming and going next to the ruins reduced the sense of depression a lot. Just when he withdrew his gaze and was about to walk down the mountain. Colin. A voice stopped him. Chapter 87 Prohibition. Mr. Berkeley, what's wrong? On the edge of the cliff, Colin turned around and asked doubtfully. Magic Lap ordered that all apprentices are temporarily prohibited from leaving the wizard territory. Temporarily prohibited from leaving. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's long-term. Teacher Rapp ordered all apprentices to return to the wizarding territory. Berkeley explained, I am going down the mountain to call back the apprentices who have returned to the city. If there is nothing urgent, don't go down the mountain and go back to the central castle. After saying that, he levitated and prepared to fly to Black Rock City. Colin frowned slightly and looked at Berkeley hesitantly. Blackstone City had such a big change last night. It would be impossible to say that he didn't care at all about what happened to people like Renee. He really wanted to take a look at the city. What's more, he still has something to get. The Lap Wizards ban made him feel a little uneasy. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's long-term. Just in case, go home and grab all the important things. Your Excellency Berkeley, he said, leaning slightly to request. Can I go back to Blackstone City and then come back right away? Berkeley looked back at him, and after thinking for a moment, he said. Okay, I will take you down. In return, you have to assist me in notifying all the school members to return to the wizarding territory. Colin nodded slightly. Berkeley continued. You only have 10 minutes to deal with your own affairs. After notifying all the apprentices, I will wait for you for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, whether you have finished your work or not, you must return to the wizard's territory with me. Okay, Sir Berkeley. Colin nodded. 10 minutes was enough. He just wanted to see what was going on in the city. Berkeley took him up from the ground and flew towards Black Rock City. A euro. The cool wind whistled past my ears. Soon, they flew to Black Rock City. The small city gate passed under me. The moment he passed by, Colin caught a glimpse of 2 steel-armored guards on duty in front of the city gate. A euro it should be Price who is gradually restoring order in Black Rock City. A euro he speculated secretly. During last night's raid, only members of the school participated, and Price was not among them. Flying over Black Rock City. As he speculated, Black Rock City has gradually begun to restore order. Guards patrolling the streets can be seen everywhere. Next to some burned out buildings, there were people recording something. Although there are still noisy cries, most ordinary people have accepted the reality. Some people were sitting and lying on the roadside to rest, some were eating, and others had begun to demolish and build damaged houses. A euro. Quote. Yes, Wizard Lap's order. Outside the gate, Colin looked at the apprentice in front of him and replied. Okay, I understand. The apprentice nodded helplessly, turned around and said a few words to the woman next to him, and then quickly rushed towards the wizard's leader. After the woman gave Colin a slight greeting, she closed the door. Colin stood at the door and exhaled softly. The guards from the inspection office were all transferred by Lord Price to maintain order in the city. The summoning ban of Lap wizards is rather urgent. If the guards are called back and then asked to notify the apprentices of the school, it will undoubtedly delay time. In addition, there were not many members of the School of Thought who returned to Black Rock City, so Berkeley decided to inform the members of the School of Thought in person. He's responsible for some of it. The one just now was the penultimate one he was responsible for. He continued walking towards the place where the next apprentice lived. Whoosh! But a figure flew towards him. Colin. Berkeley fell next to him. I have notified the last apprentice you are responsible for. Now, I'll take you to do your own thing. He paused and asked, where are you going? Palm Street. Colin whispered, thank you, Lord Berkeley. You're welcome, just to save time. Berkeley responded calmly and took him flying towards Palm Street. A euro. It seems that we need to learn a flying witchcraft as soon as possible. A euro. Colin felt the air blowing by, silently thinking to himself, and at the same time, he made learning a flying witchcraft his first priority. Soon, Palm Street appeared in front of us. Colin could see his own two-story gray villa at the highest point at a glance. The appearance is complete and there is no damage to the courtyard wall. He breathed a sigh of relief. Berkeley took him and dropped him directly in the yard. Wuxia euro, a euro. The black horse at the stable neighed in fright. I'll wait for you outside. After Berkeley put him down, he flew out again. Master. Arthur in the side room was alerted by the shout, opened the door, and shouted in surprise. It was at this time that the door to the main house was opened at the same time. Master. Renee shouted in surprise and quickly ran to Colin. Master. Demi, who was following behind her, ran over and greeted her. Yeah. Colin nodded, looked at the three of them, and smiled when he saw that they looked the same except for being a little tired. Then he briefly chatted with Renee as he walked toward the house. A euro. Oh, not long after the master went out last night, there was a bright light and a huge explosion in the distance. Then such explosions occurred several more times, and then some monsters covered in flames appeared. Renee recounted as she followed him. There are still some people who want to vandalize and rob while taking advantage of the chaos, but no one dares to come here. While listening to Renee's story, Colin casually mentioned a few words to her about the real reasons behind it. Just like that, he came to the bedroom. I have to leave soon. Colin stopped for a moment, turned to Renee and said. The school summoned all members to return to the wizarding territory and issued a ban. I shouldn't be able to come back in a short time. Renee was startled. Okay, master. She lowered her head and said. The bloody rose pattern on the collarbone is delicate and delicate. This is the pattern after the enhancement of the limit-breaking blood pattern transformation technique. It also gave her the power equivalent to that between the Peak Knight and the Great Knight. Help me buy a large ship in the east of the city that can sail across the ocean. The simpler the operation, the better. Quote. Yes, master. Renee looked up in surprise and took the magic stone handed over by Colin with both hands. Colin nodded slightly, but sighed inwardly, opened the door and walked into the bedroom. The world is like a torrent, and he can only be carried along by it. Come to the meditation room. He packed up the sea charts, the overview booklet for advanced apprentices, some important books, the photo crystals he had accumulated over the past 3 months, and some of the magic stones he had put here, and put them into his gray backpack. This is also the main reason why he wants to come back. After last night's incident, he was determined to take all these important things with him. Especially nautical charts. If we are really at the end of our rope, we can't do without them. After collecting his things, he opened the door and left. I've finished my work, Sir Berkeley. He walked out of the door and said to Berkeley, who was waiting aside. Berkeley nodded slightly. Take him up from the ground and return to the wizard's territory. Chapter 88 Inheritance. In the gray-black open room, there is a brown carpet with a triangular pattern. Daylight poured in from the square stained glass windows high on the left and right walls, and fell on a large group of wizard apprentices gathered below, forming mottled marks. Loud whispers echoed through the house. Colin stood in the corner of the crowd, his face expressionless. After Berkeley brought him back to the wizard's territory, he turned around and left in a hurry. A gray-haired witch apprentice, Fina, summoned them here. Like Berkeley, she is one of the 3 peak apprentices. At this time, she was standing quietly by the platform at the front of the crowd, expressionless, indifferent to the whispers of the apprentices. Ta ta ta. A large number of footsteps gradually came from outside the room. The noisy sounds of the apprentices' conversations in the room suddenly became fainter until they disappeared. The thick wooden door creaked open. Wizard Lap walked in slowly, followed by several wizards. A Berkeley, Needham, Price, and A the leader of the Ribbon Gang and the leader of the Snakehead Gang. A. Colin raised his head slightly and scanned it, with some confusion on his face. The number of wizards on Blackstone Island is not large, and the number of peak apprentices is even smaller. The only top apprentices he knew were the 3 from Berkeley, the leaders of the 4 major gangs in the city, and the city lord Price. There are only 8 people in total. Last night, the Chiwan gang and the Perka gang were basically destroyed, and their gang leaders were naturally dead. 8 out of 8 peak wizard apprentices were eliminated, leaving only 6. And now they are all gathered here. Berkeley and Needham walked to the right side of the platform and stood next to Fina. The 3 Prices stood on the other side of the platform with puzzled faces. Wizard Lap slowly walked onto the platform at the front of the crowd. He looked around without speaking. Everyone in the audience lowered their heads and remained silent. Even Needham, who was usually unruly, didn't dare to make any other move, remaining silent and respectful like the others. A long time. Tang. Ah. Several shrill screams suddenly sounded from the left side of the platform. The apprentices subconsciously raised their heads. After seeing it clearly, they all exclaimed in surprise. Colin's pupils also shrank slightly, and he couldn't believe what he saw. A. Price's 3 peak wizard apprentices who were originally standing on the left side of the platform were now wrapped in blazing flames, and soon turned into 3 charred corpses, falling to the ground and no longer moving. The slightly flustered chatter of the apprentices gathered into a surge of uproar that erupted in the room. Cough cough. On the platform, Wizard Lap covered his mouth and coughed twice, looking a little tired. The sounds of the apprentices' conversation stopped abruptly. Fear not, my students. He raised his head and calmly stared at the apprentices with different expressions in front of him, and spoke slowly. I'm helping you stifle possible crises in the future. He paused and said in a slightly tired voice with a little bit of undetectable fear. I'm dying, my students. The uproar broke out in the house again, this time even louder than before. What? How come? Teacher Rap. A look of disbelief appeared on Berkeley's usually calm face. The apprentices here didn't look like they were joking after seeing the Lap wizard. Most of them looked sad. All of them present, ranging from 5 years to 60 years, have lived under the protection of Lap wizards. It can be said that they are all children who grew up listening to the stories of Lap wizards. Although they are more familiar as instructors before becoming advanced apprentices. But the Lap wizard, the founder of the Lap school. No apprentice would not understand where the honor and benefits they enjoy in daily life come from. They enjoy the honor and responsibility that come with their school status. At the same time, he was also in awe of the creator of this honor, the Lap wizard. What's more, the Lap wizard has a gentle personality, and although the school system is strict, it is not cruel. Just like when a benevolent king in the mortal world is about to die, the people under his command will inevitably feel sad, and they also feel a little sad. As well as the feeling that the house that covers me is about to collapse, and I don't know where to go. After my death, only a formal wizard will appear among you again in order to continue passing on the school. Wizard Lap said in a deep voice again, with a calm expression. I have a way out for you. I will choose an apprentice from all of you here, help him advance to become a formal wizard, and inherit my heritage. Continuing the legacy. Advance to a formal wizard. The apprentices looked at each other in silence. Needham's eyes flickered on the edge of the platform, and he glanced at Fina and Berkeley beside him. If there is any apprentice present who has the best chance of becoming a formal wizard, it is undoubtedly these 3 peak wizard apprentices. Berkeley looked worried. He was more sad that the Lap wizard was about to pass away than he was to advance to a formal wizard. He came here 60 years ago and was one of the first apprentices of the rap school. Wizard Lap watched him grow from a 6 or 7-year-old child to now. For him, the Lap Wizard is both a teacher and a father. Next to Berkeley, the gray-haired Fina still looked expressionless. In the crowd, Colin, like other apprentices, lowered his head and remained calm, but there was some doubt in his heart. A euro inherit the inheritance and advance to become a formal wizard. A euro. Such benefits can also be given to apprentices below senior level. A euro. If we really want to choose a successor, shouldn't a euro we choose directly from top apprentices like Berkeley or high-level apprentices like Holt? A euro. It's not just peak apprentices like Berkeley who are in the room now. Basically all the members of the school have gathered here, even the junior wizard apprentices who survived last night are here. Wizard Lap continued to announce. All of you here have the opportunity to advance to become a formal wizard and acquire my inheritance. The requirements for selection are not based on realm, nor are they based on talent. He paused and said in a deep voice, it's based on a trial. Come with me. Wizard Lap slowly walked down from the stage and led the apprentices towards the door. Before Colin had time to think, he was followed by the other apprentices and followed the Lap Wizard. Like water pouring down, the wizards formed a long queue and gradually walked out of the room. Soon, the room that was originally full of wizards was reduced to the last dozen or so. So the sunlight passes through the square stained glass window and falls unobstructed on the brown carpet with triangular pattern, cutting out two sides of light and dark. In that dark part, squeak, a rat-like creature that merged with the shadows flashed past. A handsome wizard who was walking at the end of the team of wizards calmly turned back and quickly followed the crowd. If Colin were present, he would be surprised to find a euro among the last remaining junior apprentices of their batch. There was actually a female apprentice who, like him, successfully advanced to an intermediate wizard apprenticeship at the end of the 10-year period and stayed in the wizarding realm. If Colin hadn't a euro forgotten the female apprenticee a euro's name, he might not even say hello. Mia. Asterisk. 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 Ta ta ta. The footsteps gradually stopped. Wizard Lap stopped in front of a thick stone door in the deepest part of the central castle. Kids, he said, his voice even more tired than before. Here is the trial I have prepared for you. Colin raised his head and looked carefully at the unattractive gray stone door behind him. The surface of the stone door is smooth, with a pattern like a simple sketch of gravel on the edge. Decorative patterns in this style can be seen throughout the Blackstone Castle, nothing special. Apart from this, there are no other special traces on the stone gate. Ahima euro, the trial is very simple, you will know the details later after you go in. Wizard Lap coughed and said no more. He waved the wand in his hand, and undetectable fluctuations of magic power flashed through. Click. The stone door behind him suddenly rose upwards, and a dark and deep tunnel appeared behind him. Maybe it's because the stone gate is open. The bright crystals inlaid on the top of the corridor gradually light up from near to far, and the light path formed by them extends back until the end of the line of sight. Under the soft white light, Colin could see the entire corridor clearly. To the left and right are some rough and convex gray stone walls, with details carved in the same style as the stone door outside. Perhaps due to the humidity, cyan color stubbornly crawled out of some twists and turns and adhered to the stone wall. Go in. Wizard Lap stepped aside and signaled to the apprentices. Needham took the lead and walked towards the corridor without hesitation. He was not worried about the conspiracy of the Lap Wizard. If the Lap Wizard really wants to do harm to them, why is it so complicated? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the Lap Wizard really wanted to harm them, they would have no room to resist. Even though the Lap Wizard was seriously injured, it was still easy to deal with apprentices like them. Aren't Price's 3 peak wizard apprentices who died suddenly the best example? Of course, having lived on the island for more than 30 years, he believed that what the Lap Wizard said was true. If the Lap Wizard is really seriously injured and about to die, then these apprentices will be of no use to the Lap Wizard even if they drain their bones and blood. There is no need to spend so much time on them. Under his leadership, the apprentices also walked in hesitantly. They are obviously not fools. They know most of what Needham can think of. Ding. Colin walked unhurriedly in the middle of the crowd, quietly turning his hand to retract the cone bullet suspended in his palm. This is a little trick derived from arrow shooting. The directions of east, west, north, and south can be determined based on the magnetic field. The apprentices filed into the corridor through the stone gate. Click a euro. The moment all the apprentices entered the corridor, the stone door slowly closed. Colin subconsciously looked back and saw that many apprentices had made the same move as him. After seeing the scene behind them clearly, the apprentices breathed a sigh of relief. At the end of the line, the Lap Wizard was there, following them slowly. Ta ta ta. The apprentices walked in silence, no one spoke. Only the shadows sway under the white light. They look different. Some people are looking forward to the subsequent trials, imagining that maybe they can be the lucky one selected by the Lap Wizard and stand out. Some people looked worried. They didn't expect that in just one night, Blackstone Island would be turned upside down. But, maybe this world is just like this. Peace and stability. No matter who it is a luxurious word. A euro. The tunnel is longer than Colin imagined. Crack. He took out his pocket watch and opened it. Almost an hour has passed. He looked ahead. The Lap Wizard had walked in front of them unknowingly. Perhaps to take care of the junior apprentices, he was not very fast. It is precisely because of this that the apprentices did not get separated and still gathered together. Peak apprentices like Needham could only suppress their speed and follow Wizard Rap obediently. Another moment. Colin felt the team slow down and finally stop. He looked up and ahead. Passing through the heads blocking the view, we were at the front of the line. Wizard Lap stopped in front of a gray stone wall. The stone wall is about 3 meters high and 5 meters wide. The edges are covered with vine-like embossed lines. Colin frowned. This stone wall was obviously different in style from the gray and black corridor they were on. Chapter 89 Ceremony to advance to official wizard. Not only are the colors different, but the decorative patterns on them are also completely different. For some reason, Colin felt that the vine-like decorative pattern was inexplicably familiar. This leads to the trial location I prepared for you. Wizard Lap looked back and said solemnly, and the circle meditation method you learned is the key to entry. When Colin heard this, his doubts were slightly relieved. A euro eat a euro sa different style a euro may be nothing worth paying attention to. Since the school's specialized circle meditation method is required to enter, this place undoubtedly belongs to the school's territory. A euro. Even so, he still had doubts. Come on, come to the stone wall, and then walk in using the circle meditation method. Wizard Lapu said again. Cough cough. The next second, he suddenly leaned over and coughed violently. After a while, he straightened up. Looking at the bright red shreds of meat coughed up from his palm, a hint of gloom flashed in his eyes. He looked at the apprentice in front of him and urged. I don't have much time, come on, hurry up. Needham, who was originally at the front of the team, suddenly hesitated. Fina beside him suddenly passed him and walked straight towards the gray-white stone wall. When she reached the stone wall, she paused for a moment, as if she was adjusting her circle meditation method. After a moment, she moved on. The figure immediately sank into the stone wall, like water dripping into the sea, and ripples rippled on the calm gray-white stone wall. When Needham saw this, he no longer hesitated, followed by the circular meditation method and sank into the stone wall. Berkeley on the side slowly walked up to Rap, his eyes slightly red. Teacher Rap, your injury. Rap stared at him, was slightly startled, and sighed. Go, Berkeley. I'm looking forward to you being the last one chosen. Yes, Teacher Rap. Berkeley paused and replied slowly. He exhaled slightly, his face returned to calm, he no longer hesitated, and walked towards the gray-white stone wall. The circle meditation method was running, and the gray-white stone wall swallowed his body. Just like entering the corridor before. One by one, the apprentices sank into the stone wall. Colin, who was walking in the back half, glanced at the Lap Wizard standing next to the gray-white stone wall, and saw that there were fewer and fewer apprentices around him. No longer hesitating, he sighed slightly in his heart and walked toward the stone wall using the initial circle meditation method. No matter how doubtful he is, no matter how worried he is, he had no other choice now. He could only sink into the gray-white stone wall like other apprentices. As the last apprentice walked in, the ripples on the gray-white stone wall gradually stopped. The Lap Wizard on the side stood quietly, looking at the gray-white stone wall with vine patterns, wondering what he was thinking. He frowned slightly. The unbearable pain, like gnawing by ants, came from his chest and abdomen again. He felt his throat was itchy, and he couldn't help but cough violently again. Cough cough cough. A huge cough echoed in front of the gray stone wall, and then continued to spread along the long corridor behind, stirring up echoes. Rap seemed to be coughing out his own entrails. He did cough up something. This time, no one else was present. He no longer covered his mouth and nose, and slender bright red meat strands that looked like living creatures were still spurting out from his mouth and nose with mucus. Looking at the slender bright red meat strands scattered on the ground, twisting like maggots, his expression became even more ugly. A flash of fear quietly flashed through his eyes. Tang! Orange flames appeared out of thin air at the bright red meat shreds, burning them. Squeak! In the flames, those slender bright red meat strands twisted even more violently. If you watch carefully, there seems to be a faint neighing sound coming from it. Fortunately, after a while, these shreds of flesh finally turned into a puddle of black ashes. Wizard Lap withdrew his gaze and closed his eyes slightly, as if he was adjusting something. After a moment, he opened his eyes and strode towards the stone wall. Like other apprentices, they were submerged into the gray-white stone wall. Asterisk. 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 Come down. Come down. There is no light, no sound, just the weightless feeling of falling. After a while, light came. Colin regained his vision and looked around. The gray-white floor is flat and the walls are smooth. This is a wide hall, it seems to have been transformed from a huge natural cave. There are also many bamboo-shaped milky white stalactites hanging upside down from the roof of the hall. Another apprentice suddenly emerged from the stone wall behind him. His eyes were a little dazed, but he regained his clarity in an instant. This is how it looked when you came in, Colin secretly thought. The feeling of weightlessness made him think that he was falling from the sky, but now it seemed that it was just an illusion. At this moment, the hall was filled with apprentices just like before in front of the stone wall. What should we do? Noisy conversations were heard, and the apprentices looked around the empty hall with some confusion. Booza euro, a euro. At this moment, a dense circle of black iron pillars, about 100 in number, suddenly rose in the middle of the hall. Then, above them, wisps of blue-green light balls quietly emerged. Then, before the apprentices could react, those balls of light suddenly dissipated and were replaced by red flowers. The flowers are nothing special, they are ordinary 5-petal shapes. But it's also red leaves are a little special, they actually look like human palms. There are 2 pieces in total, just enough to hold the flower in the center. Yerhua, an apprentice exclaimed, this is a rare magic potion. Suddenly, an inexplicable feeling of hunger came. Gulu a euro, a euro. The sounds of the apprentices swallowing saliva could be heard one after another. Peak apprentices like Berkeley or other high-level apprentices are okay and can still control their hunger desires. But senior apprentices below, especially those junior apprentices, couldn't help but make swallowing sounds, and their stomachs kept ringing. But they all tried hard to restrain themselves and hesitated to step forward immediately. At this moment, Wizard Lapu's voice suddenly came from behind. What are you still waiting for? This is the trial I have prepared for you, and it is also a ceremony to assist you in becoming a formal wizard. This is the first stage of the ceremony. Quote, go ahead and take the night flower. It can elevate your body to the realm of a great knight. Even if you are already a great knight, it can enhance your vitality. The Lap wizard was floating in midair with a calm expression. A junior apprentice finally couldn't bear the temptation, rushed forward, grabbed a night flower, and swallowed it. As soon as the red flower touched his lips, it turned into thick bloody mucus, which was poured into the apprentice's mouth by the leaves of the same bloody palm. He is just the beginning. Soon, there were many junior apprentices like him who could no longer resist the temptation and swallowed the night flowers. More apprentices were still hesitant. The soul is keen. It understands what is good for itself. This hunger is normal. Wizard Lap explained. If I want to harm you, why bother? This is just a ceremony to help you advance to become a formal wizard. Only those who have perfectly absorbed the effects of these drugs can advance to become a formal wizard with my help. Go quickly, the next auxiliary medicine will be presented in a while. HMPH. Needham looked around at the cowering apprentices, sneered, strode forward, and became the first intermediate level or above apprentice to swallow the night flower. At this time, those apprentices who were the first to take the night flower gradually opened their eyes and looked happy. The blood armor unique to the great knights appeared on them. The next moment, more apprentices stepped forward without hesitation. Chapter 90. The ceremony is in progress. The blue-green light ball appeared again, and another strange auxiliary medicine emerged. A euro. Moon leaves. It is a crescent-shaped white leaf that can enhance vitality and slightly lift the spirit. This plant is now on its third. But the apprentices did not rush forward. Instead, they stood silently. At a glance, there were no light balls on some short black iron pillars. Click. Immediately afterwards, those short black iron pillars with nothing on the top quietly disappeared, about 1/3 of the total number. There were originally more than 100 black pillars in the hall, but now they have suddenly been reduced by 1/3, leaving only about 70 or 80. The number of apprentices gathered here is about 100. When there were more than 100 black pillars in the hall before, more than 100 potions appeared, and each of them could get one, and there were even some left. But now, there are only about 80 short black iron pillars left, which means that the magic potion and Yuina leaves presented have also been reduced to only about 80 pieces. More than 80 pieces are obviously not enough for the more than 100 apprentices in the hall. Colin was mixed in with the crowd. He raised his head slightly and glanced around. In midair, the figure of the Lap Wizard quietly disappeared, and it was unknown where he went. He withdrew his gaze and turned his head to silently observe the apprentices around him. Most of them had doubts on their faces, and there were faint sounds of doubt. How come the quantity of potions has decreased? Where did Mr. Rapp go? How should we allocate it? Most people tried hard to restrain their desires and hoped that the Lap Wizard would come forward to explain. But the figure of Wizard Lap never appeared. Gulu. Finally, a junior apprentice couldn't hold back the hunger and thirst brought by the strange fragrance and broke the situation. He quickly stepped forward and swallowed the potion. After swallowing, the potion gradually takes effect. The junior apprentice's face was filled with joy, his energy and blood became fuller, and his spirit became fuller. Seeing this, no one is willing to wait any longer, especially those who have tasted the sweetness of the magic potion before. They can't sit back and watch these moon leaves being divided up by others. Colin also stepped forward quickly, and with superhuman speed, grabbed a moon leaf. After getting the Yuina leaves, he did not swallow them. He covered them with his hands and pretended to swallow them. In fact, he quietly collected them in his arms. Previously, when the first plant, the year flower, was presented, the Lap Wizard watched in midair. Basically everyone swallowed Yerhua in front of the Lap Wizard. After the second auxiliary medicine was presented, the Lap Wizard left. A long-haired wizard's apprentice. Perhaps he saw the Lap Wizard disappear. So he did not hide the fact that he had not swallowed the night flowers like Colin, and secretly spit out the night flowers. Instead, he spat out the blood-colored liquid transformed from year flowers without any concealment. This also made Colin notice him. It also made him understand that apparently some apprentices only swallowed Yerhua and did not swallow it in their stomachs. Soon, the fight for Sukina's leaves ends. Those apprentices who did not grab the potion looked regretful. But his strength and luck are not as good as others, so he doesn't say anything. Colin turned his head slightly and looked around. At this time, the long-haired male wizard who had vomited night flowers like him was not far to his right, holding the second and third potions in his hand openly. Colin's eyes flickered. There are not many apprentices like the long-haired wizard, but there are quite a few, and most of them are senior wizard apprentices. He held the last two potions in his hands. As for whether the first Yerhua was swallowed, Colin didn't know. He only clearly saw the long-haired male wizard vomiting out night flowers. Other intermediate or junior apprentices basically couldn't resist the temptation of the strange fragrance and had already swallowed the auxiliary medicine. Just when Colin retracted his gaze and was about to turn his head. Click. Several bolts of lightning appeared out of thin air. In the peripheral vision, the long-haired male wizard instantly turned into charcoal. As a senior wizard apprentice, he didn't even have time to scream. Such power has exceeded the scope of apprenticeship. There were 2 or 3 apprentices who met the same fate as him. Colin's pupils shrank before he could react. Immediately afterwards, another change occurred. An invisible force swept through the ceremony. Puff. Ho ho. Ah. Among the crowd, some wizard apprentices suddenly had large amounts of blood mist appear on their bodies, fell down wailing, and soon lost their voices. In this way, in just an instant, more than 40 corpses were lying on the gray-white floor of the hall. The remaining 60 or so apprentices also stopped in horror due to the abnormality and looked at each other. The whole hall fell silent. A euro, how is this going? It took a long time before an apprentice murmured. As his words fell, noisy voices sounded like a surge. Where's Mr. Rapp? Teacher Rapp must know the reason for this. Quote. Needham on the right side of the hall looked gloomy. He turned to Berkeley not far away and asked, Teacher, what do you mean? The lightning just now struck suddenly and was astonishingly powerful. Even though he was a peak apprentice, there was no guarantee that he would be able to successfully survive lightning. And the blood mist was even more strange and inexplicable. I don't know. Berkeley shook his head, paused and said, maybe there was an emergency. Ah, Fina on the side sneered. She couldn't see Berkeley's trust in Rapp. So he sneered in a low voice, Berkeley, don't be naive, do you really think Rapp is your father? He is just a robber who took you away from your real biological parents. Quote. When Berkeley heard this, he was not angry, but just shook his head slightly. I'm different from you, Fina. I remember clearly that my parents took the initiative to sell me to Teacher Rapp for a gold coin. He paused and then said, Quote. If it weren't for Teacher Rapp, I might have become an abandoned child dying on the roadside. Fina retorted with a cold face, it's just that you are self-righteous. She glanced around and then said, the lightning kills all apprentices who have never taken magic potion even once. Those who died suddenly were all apprentices who had only taken the potion once or twice and had not taken the moon leaf for the third time. Quote. Obviously, this is a ritual with an elimination mechanism. Your dear Rapp, father, never cared about our lives, nor yours at all. She made no secret of her reasoning, and although her voice was not loud, it was enough for the remaining apprentices present to hear clearly. Many apprentices' faces changed color when they heard this. Colin remained calm on his face, secretly hiding the potions he had collected earlier. His eyes scanned the surroundings slightly, and he relaxed slightly after making sure no one noticed him. But there were many doubts in my heart. Regardless of whether Fina Euro's inference is correct, the current situation she observed is indeed correct. Those apprentices who died, indeed, as he said, did not take the potion completely in order. But I clearly didn't take the magic potion, so why wasn't it wiped away by lightning? Colin's brows knitted together. But before he could think about it deeply. Tang. As the blue-green ball of light flashed past, a new potion was presented again. But this time, the number is even smaller. A rough estimate is that there are only about 30 copies left. The blank black iron pillar slowly sank, just like the hearts of the remaining apprentices in the hall suddenly sank. This time, they no longer looked humble. There was no starter, but all the apprentices moved in unison the moment the blue-green light ball dispersed. Whoosh. The 20 or so senior wizard apprentices had a tacit understanding and did not compete with each other. Instead, they spread out and took the lead in occupying 2/3 of the potions. The remaining intermediate apprentices were lucky enough to be closer to the black pillar and there were no senior apprentices around to compete with them, so they were lucky enough to grab a potion and swallow it wholeheartedly. As for junior apprentice a 12 or 13-year-old junior wizard apprentice who was lucky enough to grab the potion howled in pain and flew to the side heavily. He was severely knocked away by a thin and pale intermediate wizard beside him. The potion fell from his hand and was thrown into the air, where it was scrambled by several intermediate wizards who had been waiting for a long time. All of a sudden, the sounds of witchcraft, curses, and painful wails were heard endlessly. The other side, Colin, who had just grabbed a new potion, suddenly changed his expression and moved slightly to the left. He dodged a fierce acid attack aimed at his head. He held a cone bullet and turned back sharply. What came into view was the female apprentice Carrie who had forced him to help and go to Regina to reconcile the relationship. At this moment, Carrie was looking at him in surprise as he dodged the attack. Laugh. Colin's eyes turned cold, and the cone bullet flew out without hesitation and shot towards Carrie. Boom. Caught off guard, a large hole was shot out of Carrie's abdomen, and the severe pain made her scream in agony. This painful howl also caused the few apprentices who were watching around to stop, and they quickly turned around and attacked other people. Colin raised his head and no longer cared about the dying Carrie. After scanning the surrounding area coldly, he pretended to take the magic potion under the cover of his palm. Secretly, he kept it in his arms like the magic potion before. Soon, the situation gradually came to a standstill. Looking around, there were only 43 wizards still standing, including himself. Among them are 3 peak wizard apprentices, 18 senior wizard apprentices, and 22 intermediate wizard apprentices. Among the intermediate apprentices, 7 of them looked gray at this time. They did not grab the magic potion. All the other junior wizard apprentices were either dead or seriously injured and unable to move, quietly waiting on the ground for death to come. The apprentices are no longer as close together as before, but stand at a distance from each other around the black pillar. When the fight is over and the new potion has not yet been presented, the hall was enveloped in an eerie silence. The tip of his nose was filled with the smell of blood, and apart from the gasps of the apprentices, only the moans and whispered curses of the seriously injured were left in his ears. There are 36 short black iron pillars in front of him. But each of them knew in their hearts that in the near future, there would not be 36 blue-green balls of light, let alone 36 magic potions. The short black iron columns will continue to settle. And only a small percentage of them will survive. Or, only one person will survive. Colin was as calm as the other apprentices, but he was thinking rapidly in his mind. He didn't understand why he slipped through the ceremony. But he knew that as the number of people decreased, he, who was only an intermediate wizard apprentice on the surface, would become more and more conspicuous. This cannot go on any longer. Boom. Suddenly, the sound of flesh colliding with the stone wall came. Colin followed the sound. In front of the gray-white stone wall they entered, an intermediate wizard apprentice was covering his head with a gloomy expression. Colin quickly reacted. The hall here is generally circular, flat and open, and you can see the whole thing by looking up. The hall is surrounded by gray and white stone walls, with no possible exit. The intermediate wizard apprentice covering his head obviously wanted to return along the original route. But it failed. This means they may have no other way out. Although Colin had been vaguely aware of this for a long time, now that it was truly confirmed, a haze still enveloped his heart. The apprentice was unwilling and tried frantically around the walls of the hall. But right now, tang, a blue-green light group flashed past the black iron pillar. The next potion was presented without any warning, this time there were only 12. No. When the apprentice who was looking for an exit saw this, he yelled and rushed towards the black pillar in the middle. But soon, he stopped in despair. Those potions have been swallowed. At the same time, puff, blood mist sprayed out from the body of the intermediate wizard apprentice who had not grabbed the potion in the previous round. They fell down in miserable howls, and finally lost their voices just like the apprentices before them. Some senior apprentices also changed their expressions. They failed to grab this round of potions. Grabbing the potion and swallowing it is a matter of seconds. If they are unlucky and slow down, even if they are stronger than the intermediate apprentices, it will not help. Needham is among them. With a gloomy look on his face, he looked around and decisively attacked the lucky intermediate wizard apprentice nearest him. Aha! Before the joy on the face of the intermediate wizard apprentice who was lucky enough to swallow the potion faded away, his eyes suddenly dimmed and lost all life. Needham held the body of the intermediate wizard apprentice, controlled the magic power, stretched out his right index finger with ease, and traced the middle line of the body. The index finger is like the sharpest scalpel. Starting from the lower lip of the intermediate wizard apprentice, the fair skin is like a hot knife cutting through butter and splitting. Exposing the inside of the larynx, the inside of the esophagus, and the inside of the stomach that are hidden underneath. Then, Needham slowly leaned down, stretched out his long bright red tongue, and licked every bit of the undigested potion inside. In the hall, there were only about 20 wizard apprentices left at this moment, all standing sparsely scattered. Some intermediate apprentices were upset just now because they didn't get the magic potion. But at this moment, looking at Needham's actions, I couldn't help but feel a little lucky. But soon, I thought that the ceremony would continue, the blue-green light would still flash, and the black iron pillars would continue to sink. The joy in their hearts was like a candle in the wind, fleeting. On the left side of the hall, Colin looked at Needham with a calm expression, but felt a little nauseous in his heart. Suddenly, there were slight footsteps approaching him. Colin. Then, a familiar voice came. He followed the sound. Chapter 91 The Last Face. After seeing it clearly, he said hello. Captain Holt. Holt, who had green hair and looked as gentle and harmless as a plant, smiled and said, I didn't expect that when we meet again, it will be like this. I'm afraid it will be the last time. Although his tone was as gentle as ever, it had a heavy meaning for some reason. Colin pursed his lips and said, Captain Holt, didn't you grab the magic potion? Yeah. Holt nodded with a gentle expression. It was precisely because he didn't grab the potion that he didn't want to do what Needham did. I happened to see Colin again, so I walked up and wanted to chat with Colin, who also failed to grab the potion. He stood next to Colin, looked at Needham who was leaning down not far away, and frowned. That's disgusting. Yes. Colin nodded in agreement, but my heart was full of mixed feelings. He deliberately didn't fight for the potion. Otherwise, with his speed and strength, he would definitely be able to grab a potion. Even if he continues, he may be able to defeat everyone and become the ultimate survivor. But this meant nothing to him. At this point, it is obvious that there is something evil going on in this ritual. No one knows whether they will die in despair if they live to the end, or whether they will succeed in becoming a formal wizard with his help, as Wizard Lapu said. If he continues to follow the established procedures of the ceremony, he does not think that he, a senior wizard apprentice, has the ability to escape from the trap set by a formal wizard who has lived for nearly 300 years. Stick to your humanity. For no reason, Holt said to him suddenly. Or maybe he said it to himself. At this time, the apprentices in the hall were divided into two distinct areas. The apprentices who grabbed the potion next to the black pillar, and the apprentices who did not grab the potion were standing around. There are 12 figures in total next to the black pillar, all of whom are senior wizard apprentices. It's all now. A moment ago, there were several lucky intermediate wizard apprentices. At this moment, they all turned into split corpses like Needham's mid-level wizard apprentice. No doubt, following Needham's demonstration, several senior wizard apprentices, unable to withstand their thirst for life and fear of death, did the same thing as him. Colin watched them quietly, and suddenly his expression changed slightly. Stick to your humanity. He paused, sighed, and repeated what Holt had just said. In super-sensory vision, the aura of humanity and knowledge that covered the several senior wizard apprentices who later performed the same tasks as Needham suddenly became thinner. One of them even broke into pieces and dissipated. Those filthy black spots, which seemed to be transformed into the most filthy things in the world, were like tired birds returning to their nests, rushing toward the senior apprentice whose humanity and knowledge were shattered. Suddenly, alienation began. No. The senior wizard apprentice had a look of disbelief on his face and cried out in tears. Boom. The next second, countless attacks fell on him in unison, drowning him. Before the alienation was complete, the apprentice turned into ashes in an instant. Colin took back his hand after casting the fireball spell. This is the tradition of this world. Alienated and fallen wizards are the common enemy of all wizards. They either abandoned the humanity they had always adhered to, or they abandoned knowledge and bowed their heads to the gods. In short, everyone gets it and kills it. Seeing this, the wizards who had not been alienated had expressions of uncertainty. The wizards around them silently distanced themselves from them. No one cares whether they are a good person, but they all want the friends around them to be good people. Or, at least, not willing to be friends with someone who has no boundaries. Whether it will be alienated or whether it will violate the human nature that you insist on, there is no unified standard, it is all up to your own judgment. Everyone's bottom line is different. For example, Needham's aura of humanity and knowledge did not change at all before and after he killed the intermediate wizard apprentice. However, it is worth noting that even if there is no change, his aura is thinner than that of ordinary high-level wizard apprentices. Alas, Holt suddenly shook his head and sighed. Teacher Rapp, what exactly does he want to do? Colin remained silent. It's a pity, Colin, you have just been led by the wizard, and you haven't had time to experience the wonders of the world. Holt suddenly turned around and sighed, patting him on the shoulder. I am almost 70 years old this year. For ordinary mortals, living to this age is considered a long life. Colin nodded silently and listened carefully. He knew that this was Holt trying to relieve himself. Death is not scary. The scary thing is knowing that death is coming but there is nothing you can do about it. Holt kept talking about many and complicated things, as if he was talking about whatever came to his mind. Captain Holt. Colin suddenly spoke. What's wrong? Holt paused and asked doubtfully. Quote. Nothing a euro. Holt didn't pay attention and continued to ramble. There is a kind of hyacinth that has a peculiar umbrella shape. When the spring breeze comes, they will fall off on their own initiative and turn into human-shaped elves with umbrella-shaped flowers on their heads. They will float away with the airflow and dig out a flower in the suitable soil. Bury yourself in a small pit. Some who are particularly naughty will never be able to take root because they have wasted the opportunity. But in the next year, it can play freely in the world, until the spring breeze comes again, and its companion grows into a hyacinth in the spring breeze, but it will wither in the gentle spring breeze, a euro. At this time, interesting. A calm voice suddenly broke in. Colin turned his head slightly. A handsome-looking man of insignificant age approached. Luke. Colin moved his lips and said hello. He paused and then said, "Didn't you grab the magic potion too?" Luke nodded slightly, shook his head again, and said with a faint smile, "Snatching the potion doesn't mean you can survive, does it?" Holt next to him was stunned when he heard this, looked at Luke, shook his head and chuckled. 2. There was a sudden silence. Colin raised his head slightly and crossed the black iron pillar in the middle. The intermediate apprentice who had been searching for the exit before was still circling the stone wall of the hall, continuing to search. Several apprentices, like him, joined the search for an exit. Holt and Luke looked calm. If this was really a trap set by the Lap Wizard, how could such a loophole be left? Facing an official wizard who had lived for nearly 300 years, they had no power to resist. Just as the Lap Wizard said at first that this was a ceremony to assist in becoming a formal wizard, they could only choose to believe it. They have no choice. One way or another. Perhaps, this is indeed a ceremony to assist the advancement of a formal wizard. However, they can no longer see that moment. At this time, the stone wall not far away on the right. Why is there no exit? An intermediate apprentice looking for an exit gritted his teeth and roared, magic brewing in his hands. A fireball shot towards the gray-white stone wall. Boom. But it was all in vain. After the flames dissipated, the stone wall was still gray and white, without any change. He put down his hands in despair, covered his face, and his roar turned into weak tears. Holt looked back and sighed softly. It seems, the journey of life is about to end today. Although it didn't take long. But according to the previous interval, the next blue-green light ball will appear soon. In the short period of time, let alone looking for life, they didn't even have much time to express their emotions. Luke's lips moved slightly as if he wanted to speak, but in the end he remained silent. He just glanced at Carrie's dead figure not far away and sighed. There are apprentices in the distance still persevering in search of life, and some are silently weeping in despair. Colin looked at them, his expression becoming more and more silent. Their fear is not his fear. Although he seems to have slipped through the ritual, it seems that this is really a trap set by the Lap Wizard. In the end, the Lap Wizard will inevitably appear. And although he was spared by the ceremony for unknown reasons. Moreover, although he planned to wait for the next punishment to come, pretending to be a corpse, hiding it from the remaining wizard apprentices. But he couldn't hide it from the Lap Wizard who was bound to arrive in the end. Just when Colin was in a state of mind. Tang. The blue-green light group appeared again at the top of the black column. Goodbye. Holt turned back to him and said, with extremely complicated emotions on his face, including fear, calmness, and attachment. Luke on the side smiled at him. Puff. The next moment, invisible force swept across. Blood mist spurted out from Holt and Luke, forming a dense mist. Their eyes dimmed instantly and they fell heavily to the ground. Colin lowered his eyes and said nothing. He just controlled his body and forced out the blood mist. Subsequently, boom. Just like Holt and Luke, they fell heavily in the bright red blood mist. Lose your voice. Chapter 92 A New Stage. Bang. Bang. In the gray-white hall strewn with corpses, only dull and weird collision sounds could be heard. Apart from that, there was no other sound in the gray-white cave hall, and it was eerily quiet. The tip of his nose was filled with the nauseating smell of blood, and beneath him was the hard, cold gray ground. Colin lay motionless on the ground and remained silent. He knew that these strange collision sounds were caused by the collision between the bodies of the apprentices who fell to the ground and the hard floor of the cave hall. Another moment passed. Booze a euro. Suddenly, blue-green light shines and the ball of light appears again. Gulu a euro. At the same time, not far away, several loud stomach rumblings were heard due to stomach peristalsis. Colin tensed up, trying to suppress his hunger. At this moment, it had been quite a while since he had feigned death and collapsed. The blue and green light balls have appeared twice. But there were 10 apprentices alive during the ceremony, including him. This is not because the punishment mechanism of the ritual in the cave hall is not working. It's because the blue-green light balls suddenly stopped decreasing after they were reduced to 9. It was as if the ceremony had entered a new stage. But the light sphere has not decreased, but it does not mean that this stage is a mild stage. On the contrary, The horror at this stage has not been reduced by half. With his eyes slightly opened, Colin carefully peered at the apprentices in the distance. Seeing the apprentices being dominated by hunger, like wild beasts, he couldn't help but feel chilled in his heart. Perhaps the ritual has indeed reached a new stage, and the scent of the magic potion that appears is stronger. Or maybe it was the potions that the apprentices had taken in order that strengthened the allure of this strange fragrance. In short, those apprentices who had taken the potion could no longer restrain their desire for the potion. Whenever a new potion is presented to them by the ball of light, they seem to be dominated by hunger and turn into irrational beasts. All I know is that my saliva is flowing, and I use my hands and feet to swallow. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing for him. The most terrifying thing is after the apprentices swallow the magic potion. For example, at this moment a euro. Those apprentices had just swallowed the magic potion. It was as if they had been struck by lightning and their whole bodies were numb. The apprentices lost consciousness like dead trees and fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Amidst the crashing sound like a command signal, the real change quietly began. Due to the angle of view, Colin didn't see it clearly. But the bodies of the apprentices swelled inexplicably like waves, and the strange rustling sounds came from their ears. But it made him feel as if there were leeches clinging to his skin, and he felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. He knew that such changes among the apprentices would last for a long time until the next potion was presented. They will suddenly wake up again and turn into hungry beasts. We can't wait any longer. Colin secretly thought to himself. After entering the passage to the gray-white stone wall, he had been secretly using the suspended cone bomb to judge and record the direction. Unfortunately, although the general direction can be determined, due to the twists and turns of the passage and the height differences. Therefore, he could not determine the specific distance traveled and how far it was on the surface. But the location of the gray-white stone wall is roughly on the west side of the central castle. It is almost the location on the west side of Black Rock City. Before he could think about it, suddenly, cough cough cough. Lapu's violent coughing sound came faintly from behind, getting closer and closer. Colin's scalp exploded. At the same time, Colin, a familiar voice appeared in his heart out of thin air. Before he could ask, then I heard a familiar voice in my heart continue to speak. There is no time to explain. Wizard Lapu will be back soon. Follow my guidance and escape from here. Colin's expression changed slightly, and a flash of determination flashed in his eyes. No time to think too much. Single quote. No matter what path this voice leads, it can't be worse than facing the Lap wizard directly. After all, for the super sensible state, the aura on his body was like a torch, so conspicuous that such a superficial disguise was meaningless. He has not yet had time to grasp the white crystal pendant on his chest, and can only passively form a mental fog. This is also extremely conspicuous in the supersensory state. As for placing hope on the Lap wizard not to activate the supersensory state, he is not so naive. Although he had many thoughts in his mind, he made a decision almost instantly. In a desperate situation, even if what is handed to you is not a life-saving straw but a red-hot iron rod, you should grab it without hesitation. The powerful body control ability brought by the ultimate knight made him stand up quietly like an agile cat. The apprentices who fell to the ground were unaware. Colin didn't stop at all, took steps, and rushed towards the stone wall in a corner of the hall. Then, like raindrops falling into a lake, his figure quietly disappeared after a ripple. Then, inside the gray-white cave hall, blue-green light shone again, and loud stomach rumbles sounded one after another. Mid-air, the figure of the Lap wizard also appeared quietly, floating quietly. His face was as white as gold, and he was calmly watching everything in the hall below him. In the supersensory state, the whole world is filled with dark spots, and the apprentices, emitting a halo, are swallowing a golden plant. This is the final potion of the ritual. If Colin were still at the scene, he would definitely recognize this potion at a glance. This potion he had swallowed before a euro. Special golden 4-leaf clover. After swallowing the last potion, the apprentices fell to the ground again. When Wizard Lap saw this, a trace of expectation flashed across his dull face. He slowly descended from the air, stepped to the short black iron pillar, and waited quietly. But at this moment, a dark translucent spike suddenly shot towards him. Wizard Lap turned slightly, his expression unchanged. A ball of orange flame suddenly appeared in front of the translucent spikes, and exploded instantly upon contact with it. The two annihilate each other and dissipate. He turned his head slightly, looked calmly at the black-robed figure slowly walking out of the dark shadow not far away, and said lightly, "I already knew you would show up. The remnants of the Blackstone family." Quote. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 93 Macintosh. Harrington walked slowly out of the dark secret passage. He was wearing a black robe and holding a black scepter with dark gold patterns in his hand. His face was fair and he looked like an ordinary middle-aged man. He was about to speak, but his expression froze. A dark mouse suddenly appeared in the hand of the Lap Wizard in front of him. This is the hidden rat. The hidden rat looks no different from an ordinary gray rat. But if you look closely, you can see that its body in the dark area is perfectly integrated with the shadow, making it extremely difficult to detect with the naked eye. Squeak. The next second, tang, a ball of flame suddenly enveloped the hidden rat, burning it into charcoal. Harrington's expression remained unchanged. He naturally recognized this hidden rat that originally belonged to him. At the same time, he also understood why Rap was not surprised by his sudden attack and was even prepared for it. Turning his head slightly, his eyes rested on the body of an ordinary female apprentice not far away. That was the secret child he placed in the Lap school, Mia. I didn't expect it to be exposed. Before he could think too much. A ball of scorching flames shot towards him quickly. Harrington's eyes narrowed and he waved the dark golden scepter. Black stone walls rise from the ground. Boom. The flames collided with the stone wall and exploded. The huge power blew the stone wall into pieces and stirred up a burst of smoke. Rap was a little surprised. He looked at Harrington carefully, and finally his eyes rested on the scepter with dark gold patterns. The Blackstone family's rare object, he said slowly and in a positive tone, is this what you rely on? Harrington remained indifferent. He waved his scepter and continued to attack Rap. He has been observing in the dark for a long time, and the Lapu in front of him is already at the end of his strength. It's useless to say more. The blood feud between the Blackstone family 60 years ago will definitely end today. While Harrington was fighting fiercely with the Lap Wizard. Sudden, ha 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 ha. A burst of crazy joyful laughter sounded, echoing in the gray hall. In the middle of the pool of dark red blood and twisted corpses everywhere, Needham lost his previous graceful posture. He turned his head to look at himself and raised his palm, laughing unbridled. Is this the power of an official wizard? After swallowing the last potion, the special golden four-leaf clover. It was as if the broken ring was finally put together into the last piece. Several magical medicines in his body merged with each other under the influence of the ritual, brewing an incredible power. The other side, not far away, Wizard Harrington and Lap stopped temporarily because of this change and stood still at a distance from each other. I didn't expect Macintosh's experiment to be successful. Harrington rubbed the scepter in his hand, a trace of greed flashing in his eyes. He looked at the center of the short black iron pillar, and memories swept into his mind. The Blackstone family is a native of this island. They were originally just an ordinary wizard apprentice family. But about 200 years ago, one of his ancestors accidentally discovered the ruins left by a second-level wizard named Macintosh on the island. The ruins are in the dark forest, which is Macintosh's wizard tower and his experimental site. After that, the ancestors of Blackstone relied on the resources and knowledge left behind by Macintosh's ruins to successfully advance to become a formal wizard. It also started the era when the Blackstone family ruled the island. Until 60 years ago, the ancestor was assassinated by Lapu in front of him. On that dark moonlit night, young Harrington fled in panic from Blackstone Castle under the leadership of his loyal servant. At first, he originally thought that Rap had left with the loot. After all, this is just a barren island. And the Lap Wizard never showed up on the island. The residents of the island knew nothing, but suddenly discovered that the Blackstone family that originally ruled the island had disappeared for some reason. But after a while, when the island residents were suffering from the loss of official wizard protection, the culprit who caused all this, the Lap Wizard. But he no longer hides, coming like a savior to rebuild the order of Blackstone Island. At the same time, he replaced the Blackstone family and became the new ruler of the island. As a young man at the time, he didn't know why the Lap Wizard stayed on this barren island at first a euro. Until he worked hard out of hatred and read through the books and materials that the family had hidden in another place for backup. After learning about Macintosh's ruins hidden in the dark forest and his crazy experiments from above, I quietly realized. Needham, come and help me quickly. At this time, Wizard Lap's thoughts moved slightly, and he suddenly turned his head and gave a deep command to Needham. Needham's eyes flickered next to the short black iron pillar, and he looked at the situation in front of him with some hesitation. Quote. Why are you still standing there? Do you really think you have become a formal wizard? Wizard Lap snorted and urged again. When Needham heard this, his expression changed and he felt himself carefully. He did not doubt what the Lap wizard said. He didn't know anything about Macintosh's experiments. In his opinion, there is no doubt that the ritual here was designed by Lap wizards. And now it seems that the effect of the ritual here is indeed as the Lap wizard said, it can help them advance to become a formal wizard. Although the process was a bit cruel, he was the final winner. He didn't resent the Lap wizard, he was even a little grateful. And those cruel processes were just some hardships and thorns on his road to success. He no longer cares. Soon, Needham gradually sank. As Wizard Lap said, although his current state is much stronger than before. But upon closer inspection, there is indeed a hint of disharmony. It seems that the soul is slightly weaker than the body, and has not yet reached the level of a formal wizard. Although there are many thoughts in the heart, in reality it is only a moment. Needham turned his head to look at Wizard Lap with a respectful expression. Okay, teacher, I'll come right away. As he walked towards Harrington, he spoke, his voice gradually becoming louder. Take one step with him. Click. The joints on the body kept making sounds like exploding beans. Needham's figure swelled in the wind, and in an instant he was transformed from a gentle and thin wizard into a huge and ferocious monster covered in black armor. This is his signature witchcraft, flesh and blood reproduction. At this moment, under the surging power coming from the body, the power is far greater than before, and it has reached the category of official wizard. When Harrington saw this, his expression changed. But his attention was still focused on the center of the black pillar further away. At this time, Needham, who transformed into a huge black armored monster, suddenly let out a menacing howl. His steel-like horny black armor is melting like wax, turning into flowing black-red liquid flowing down his body. No. Wizard Lap let out a low cry and quickly turned his head. But what he was looking at was not Needham, who was gradually melting. But it was in the center of the black pillar not far away. Harrington did the same, staring intently at the center of the black pillar. There, at some point, a gray-white stone pillar with a vine-like pattern that was obviously different from the other black pillars quietly appeared. The top of the gray-white stone pillar. After Needham woke up, an expanding golden light spot gradually appeared. At this moment, the light spot has turned into a head-sized light group. But now, because of Needham's abnormality, the expansion speed has suddenly slowed down, and it has almost stagnated, and even flickered dimly. A healing light suddenly shined on Needham. Wizard Lap coughed, suppressed the feeling of fatigue in his body, and waved his hand again. The same healing light once again fell on Needham's body, which had melted a small part. Macintosh's real potion hasn't fully emerged yet, and Needham can't die yet. €. Wizard Lap's eyes were blazing and he roared secretly in his heart. If the information about the Macintosh experiment compiled and preserved by the Blackstone family is correct. That's if the Macintosh manuscript wasn't exaggerated. He had been pursuing it for 60 years and even established the Lap School, originally intending to use it to advance to the second-level wizard. The Macintosh potion that appears at the end of Macintosh's fantasy experiment. Now, it is his only hope to survive. Chapter 94. 3 people. Another white healing light fell on Needham. Looking at the traces, it turned out to be the healing witchcraft released by the black-robed Harrington. At this moment, Harrington was looking solemnly at Needham, whose body was still disintegrating and melting. Like Rap, he did not want to see Needham die, causing Macintosh's experiment to be unable to continue. He couldn't bear to part with Macintosh's potion that would appear at the end of the experiment. Macintosh's experiment only had this one chance. Rupp had been preparing for it for 60 years. If you fail this time, you may never get Macintosh's potion again. And now he is just a peak wizard apprentice. He can barely exert the strength of a first-level junior wizard only by relying on the dark gold patterned scepter in his hand. But if Macintosh's manuscript is not false, if only he could get Macintosh's potion, maybe he can become the second official wizard in the history of the Blackstone family. In this way, as a genuine and official wizard, he can rule Blackstone Island again and restore the glory of the Blackstone family. Certainly. He is not stupid either. This was a judgment he made after carefully weighing it. Take a look at the entire gray-white cave hall. The Lap Wizard has been seriously injured and is on the verge of death. Now he is overstretching his body to cast healing witchcraft. His condition will only get worse in the future. Not to mention Needham, whose body melted. By the time Macintosh's magic potion appears, no one will cast healing spells on his behalf, maybe he will collapse and die. As for the other apprentices who fell on the ground with their chests heaving slightly, there was no need to worry. So, to the end. There will always only be a duel between him and Lap, no different from now. It will even be more advantageous because the Lap Wizard casts healing witchcraft to overdraw the body. Harrington glanced around and made a decision in his mind. He continued to wave the dark gold scepter in his hand. Although he could just watch the Lapu Wizard heal Needham's collapsed body without consuming magic power. But there is no room for error in the magic potion, and it may not be possible to cure it by Lap alone. A stronger healing light than before flew out from the top of the dark gold wand in his hand and shot toward Needham. Buzz. It seems that quantitative changes caused qualitative changes. Under the continuous healing witchcraft he and Lapu cast. Not far away, Needham actually changed. His condition gradually stabilized, and his body no longer disintegrated and melted. Even the part of his body that had melted was slowly recovering at this moment. As his body recovered, a look of relief flashed across Needham's face. But the next second, his expression changed slightly. An unknown voice sounded directly in his head. Don't be nervous, Macintosh, participant of the experiment, I am Macintosh, the tower spirit of the Wizard Tower. The voice was mechanical and cold, unable to distinguish between male and female. Now it seems to be interfered with by something, and it is not stable enough. It sounds stumbling and not clear. Needham glanced at Harrington and Rapp, who were unaware. There was no emotion on their faces. The ritual you have gone through is the last and most proud experiment designed by Wizard Macintosh in his life. He also gave his name to it, Macintosh's experiment. Quote. Needham was slightly startled. Isn't this a ritual established by the Lap Wizards to assist them in becoming official wizards? He was confused, but he didn't waste time to refute the doubt. Thoughts kept flashing through his mind. He grasped the key points and asked in his mind. What was the purpose of Macintosh's experiment? If this is not a ritual established by Lap Wizards, then its purpose may not be, as Wizard Lap said, to assist them in becoming official wizards. It would be difficult to explain to you, the participants, the great purpose of the Macintosh experiment in a short period of time. You just need to know that I am calling you to remind you that the experiment is not over yet. You still need to take the gray Jintosh magic potion that will appear on the stone pillar before you can truly complete this experiment. Needham felt his body gradually return to normal under the healing witchcraft, his eyes twinkling. But Ta Ling's next words dispelled his other thoughts. Please note, participant, at this moment, your body's state is only temporarily stable. Healing, once the witchcraft stops, it won't take long before it will continue to collapse. You can only an %. At this point, Ta Ling's voice suddenly became more laggy, and it was even difficult to hear clearly. Something seems to have happened. Vaguely, Needham seemed to hear a voice that was different from the mechanical and indifferent tower spirit. But I couldn't hear clearly what was said. After a while, all the sounds quietly disappeared. No matter how much he called in his heart, he never got any response. Needham frowned slightly and turned his head. At this moment, Wizard Lap and Harrington were standing on both sides of the gray-white stone pillar, and they were continuously casting healing witchcraft on him in tacit agreement. The golden light group on the gray-white stone pillar began to slowly expand again after his condition gradually recovered. At this moment, the scope it covers is almost approaching the edge of the top plane of the gray-white stone pillar. The pale golden light was reflected in the depths of Needham's eyes. The scene I saw before me, the Lap Wizard and the black-robed figure abnormally treating themselves, as well as the light group on the gray-white stone pillar in the distance. Undoubtedly, it proves that what he said in his mind just now about claiming to be the tower spirit is not false. So, he understands. When Macintosh's potion emerged from the golden light, these healing spells that currently maintain the balance of his body will undoubtedly disappear in an instant. The Lap Wizard will compete with the black-robed figure on the other side for Macintosh's potion. And otherwise, he will die because he will lose the power of healing witchcraft and his body will continue to melt. Needham clenched his fists, lowered his head, and grinned silently from an angle that the two Laps could not see. Then, he gathered all his emotions, raised his head and stood quietly. Chapter 95 Ghost. The Other Side. Come down. Come down. After a familiar feeling of weightlessness, the chaotic vision returned. Booza euro, a euro. He cast a light spell in his hand, and soft white light suddenly spilled out, illuminating the surrounding area. Colin looked around and exhaled slightly after a moment. What came into view was finally no longer the despairing gray-white cave hall before, and the smell of blood that had always lingered on the tip of his nose finally dissipated. But he didn't relax too much, and his face still had a trace of solemnity that couldn't be erased. Macintosh's potion. While muttering in his heart, he followed the instructions of the voice that appeared in his heart and walked forward along the gray-white passage in front of him. The light of the light spell can only illuminate a short distance of the gray passage in front of you, and the passage farther away is still pitch black. The embossed vine patterns on the gray walls on the left and right sides lengthened the dark shadows with the movement of the white light source in the hand. Ta ta ta. The deep passage was silent, only the sound of his footsteps echoed. Not long after, he came to the end of the passage. A smooth stone door carved with blooming flowers appears in front of you. Click. As he approached, the stone door opened automatically. A faint blue light came out from the gap in the door and fell on his face, making his blue eyes even darker. Haven't seen you for a long time. In the small room, at the top of the pyramid-shaped stone platform in the middle, a ball of light-emitting blue light was greeting him. Long time no see. Colin's lips moved and his voice was a little slow. Erica. But he still hesitated and called out the name. The familiar voice that suddenly appeared in the cave hall before was none other than Erica's. After she instructed her to escape, she briefly told him about the crazy experiment called Macintosh and his potion on the passage she had just come from. Macintosh's experiment. He still couldn't calm down. Inexplicably, he thought of the apprentices who died during the ceremony, those who had witnessed the ceremony. They didn't even know the truth until they died. After greeting each other, the room fell into silence. Colin looked at the blue ball of light in front of him, was silent for a moment, and said, "It's nice to see you again, Erica." As if he felt that what he said was not straightforward enough, he added, "I mean, I'm glad you're alive. I'm already dead." Erica interrupted him, her voice calm and without fluctuations. "I'm just a mutilated ghost, or, not even a ghost at all." Colin was startled and his eyes lowered. In this world, it is not uncommon to lose the body and let the soul attach to other things to continue to exist. There are even many wizards who are proficient in life transformation and will specially change themselves into a more powerful steel mechanical body. He originally thought that Erica was in this situation, maybe she had some adventure or something. But ghosts are another story. It is the product of accidental birth after the death of the soul. Strictly speaking, although the ghost will retain complete or partial memories of the original owner. But in fact it is no longer the original soul. The original soul has died. Ghosts no longer have the emotions of ordinary people, and their way of thinking is completely different. They don't know warmth or cold, love or hate. The only motivation for living is the deepest obsession of the original soul. After entering the dark forest, I failed to find a miracle. The crystal ball flickered, and Erica took the initiative to start telling. Finally, I got lost in a cave and died. I don't know how long it took, but I was alive again. Unlike other chaotic ghosts born from weak souls, my memory is not vague, and is even surprisingly complete. After saying this, Erica paused and mentioned something vaguely. I was very confused at first, but then I thought about the legend passed down in the family. Maybe it has something to do with my bloodline. In short, I am stronger than I thought. My strength has far exceeded that of a junior wizard apprentice, and I have even almost reached the level of a senior apprentice. It's a pity that before I had time to fully adapt to the ghost's body a euro. Not far from the cave, the tower spirit in the Macintosh Wizard Tower noticed me and grabbed me, preparing to devour me to replenish its own origin. Then, as you can see, I swallowed the tower spirit in turn, but I also became broken. Colin silently digested the information in Erica's words. So Colin, as you can see, I am not a threat to you, but can help you escape from the Macintosh Wizard Tower that is about to be destroyed. The crystal ball flickered and Erica continued. So what do I have to give? Colin asked straight to the point. He stared at the light blue crystal ball in front of him, already having a vague answer in his mind. Do you still keep the letter I sent you? Colin nodded without surprise. Seeing this, the crystal ball flashed rapidly for a moment, seeming to be a little happy. Very well, Colin, what I need you to do is to take that letter and my body back to the capital of Holy Flame Kingdom, Ryan, and bring them to my parents. In return, I will let you successfully escape from this wizard that is about to be destroyed. Not enough. Colin interrupted her. He took off the silver trigonometric school badge on his chest and rubbed it gently. Then he raised his head, stared at the crystal ball in front of him with his blue eyes, and moved his lips. I need you to pay me more. Yes, as long as I can do it. Erica replied without hesitation. Tell me what payment you need from me. I need knowledge. Colin's eyes were dark and he spoke softly. The voice is calm, but for some reason, it reminds people of the deep sea. There are so many hidden undercurrents underneath. The silver triangular badge in his hand twisted and deformed under the constant exertion of his fingers, making a slight sound. Then, he threw it aside and paused. He opened his mouth slightly, took a breath, and emphasized in a deep voice as if he was suppressing something. I need power. Erica, since you swallowed Macintosh's tower spirit, you must have inherited the knowledge stored in it. Even if it's not completely inherited, it doesn't matter even if it's incomplete, as long as it's knowledge, I need it. And anything else that brings power, witchcraft tools, potions, witchcraft crystals, magical objects. Everything, as long as it can bring strength, I want it all. Quote. The light blue crystal ball was silent for a moment, then said without hesitation. No problem. However, due to the ravages of time, due to the loss of the tower spirit's origin, there is not much stored knowledge left. In addition, I have fought and collided with it before, and now there is nothing left. It doesn't matter, just give me as much as you have. Okay. Crystal Ball said no more. Booze euro. A moment later, several blue-green light balls suddenly appeared in the room, and then suddenly dissipated, leaving material scattered on the floor. Pick up the leftmost ring first. It's a storage witchcraft tool. The crystal ball commanded. Then put the white crystal ball next to the ring to me, and I will burn all the stored knowledge into it. Yeah, Colin nodded and turned around to pick up the storage ring. But as if he thought of something, he suddenly paused, turned around and asked. Erica, what did you mean by the wizard tower that is about to be destroyed, before? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel Chapter 96 Convinced. The innermost chamber of the wizard Macintosh Tower. Colin had a solemn look on his face and quickly packed up various supplies scattered on the smooth floor of the tower chamber. And put them into the storage ring one by one. Boom. Suddenly, there was a loud noise accompanied by a shaking. Colin's heart tightened, and he subconsciously turned to Erica and asked. How long will it take to burn knowledge? It's already about 70%. Colin nodded slightly and continued to quickly collect supplies. He was still in great shock. That Macintosh's potion turned out to be a complete scam. No, Macintosh doesn't think he's lying, he's just crazy. His so-called last and proudest experiment designed at the end of his life was to resurrect his own Macintosh. Was it actually designed with the inspiration of the gods? Macintosh, the wizard, he was so stupid that he listened to Goto-Euro's revelation. At this time, in the gray and white stone hall, the golden light cluster on the gray-white stone pillar has spread to the same size as the gray-white stone pillar. Brilliant golden light illuminated the entire gray-white stone hall. The originally ferocious corpses and dark red pools of blood were all coated with a layer of gold foil, adding an indescribable sense of grandeur to the originally gloomy and terrifying scene. The white healing light continued to shine on Needham. Needham stood there with a dull look on his face, but if you look carefully, you can see the fierce look hidden in his eyes. The Lap Wizard's face became increasingly pale, and he didn't even bother to cover his mouth and nose when he coughed. They were confronting Harrington. Another moment passed. The golden light suddenly dissipated, and the hall once again became gloomy and terrifying. Under the dim light, a heart-shaped golden fruit suddenly appeared on the top of the gray-white stone pillar. A euro. That's Macintosh's magic potion. At the same time. In the hall, the three of Lapu moved instantly. As the figure shook, several rays of witchcraft light flashed through. Next moment, in front of Harrington, an incandescent ray was continuously piercing through the layers of black shields flashing with metallic light in front of him. In front of the Lap Wizard, an orange flame barrier rises from the ground, firmly blocking the light black spikes. And the other side, Needham looked in disbelief. The severe pain that shot through his body made him scream in agony. He never expected that the moment Macintosh's potion appeared. In addition to attacking each other, Rapp and Harrington also shot a witchcraft at him in unison. Blazing white rays and translucent light black thorns gather under the fire. The balance he had managed to maintain temporarily in his body was instantly broken. Needham's body began to melt like wax again. He howled miserably and turned into a pile of black and red flesh and blood. The plan that had been brewing in my heart for a long time was over before it was even put into action. After a while, the battle on the other side has also been decided. Cough cough. The Lap Wizard coughed twice, and slender bright red meat strands spurted out from his mouth and nose, splashing everywhere. Hiss. Those slender strands of bright red meat are far more vibrant than before. When they fell to the ground, they twisted and squirmed like snakes and insects, and quickly gathered into a ball, as if something strange was brewing. Wizard Lap ignored him. He glanced at Harrington not far away, who was temporarily restrained in place by his own serious injury. Without any hesitation, he ran wildly towards the gray-white stone pillar not far away, using both hands and feet. In his life, the two witchcrafts he was most proud of were the sun-drenched fireballs, as well as what he had previously used to trap the projection of the Lord of Flesh and Thorns was now used to trap Harrington, the space confinement chain. From the beginning, there was no other outcome to this fight. Since he knew in advance that Harrington would come, he was naturally fully prepared. Close. Close. The heart-shaped golden fruit is right in front of you. The one Macintosh prepared to resurrect himself, which can enhance vitality, extend lifespan, strengthen soul, and increase magic power. A euro. Macintosh's potion. Wizard Lap was breathing heavily. With every step he took, countless slender, bright red flesh strands fell down his body. Just like the remaining water droplets after taking a bath, they scatter one after another with the movement of the body. If you were to lift the gray witch robe that covered his body at this moment, you would be horrified to discover his originally smooth and healthy skin. Now, no intact area can be found. What you see are densely packed, twisting, bright red granules. Rapp's eyes were filled with desire. Macintosh's manuscript gave him great confidence. Although he is not a wizard who specializes in potions. But in the past 60 years, he has repeatedly studied all the information about Macintosh left by the Blackstone family, as well as the preserved Macintosh manuscripts. Most of the knowledge and conclusions in it have been confirmed by him to be true. He also verified the final Macintosh experiment many times. Every time he sees it, he can't help but sigh. What a beautiful, simple ceremony. What an incredible idea. The same verification was carried out by the Black Stone Wizard who previously ruled the island. The same conclusion was reached. The words that came out were just like him, as if they were chanting the praises of the gods. What a beautiful, simple ceremony. What an incredible idea. Macintosh's potion will surely save him. The Lap Wizard is convinced of this. Chapter 97 Gods. Sudden. Click. A slender streak of white lightning suddenly appeared in the cave hall, striking the void. When Wizard Lapu saw this, his heart trembled. In his current state, he can no longer cope with any possible accidents. This blazing white lightning is obviously the power of the Macintosh Wizard tattling. But he had stayed on Blackstone Island for 60 years, and he had visited the Macintosh Wizard Tower countless times to check it out. The tower spirit had already been clearly analyzed by him. It was just a rigid mechanical program. Why now? He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He gritted his teeth and rushed towards the heart-shaped Macintosh's potion that was already close at hand. He has no way out. Click. Blazing white lightning fell again. Wizard Lap's heart trembled, but the lightning wasn't hitting him. Not far away, Harrington, who was imprisoned by him, was struck by lightning that suddenly appeared. He screamed and lost his life instantly. The scepter with dark gold patterns fell from his hand, and then disappeared quietly after a burst of blue-green light flashed. On the other side, Rapp finally got his hands on the Macintosh potion that he had longed for. Finally, ha 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 ha. He held the heart-shaped potion in his hand. He no longer had his usual calmness and was laughing maniacally. But the next second, before he could take it, boom! The pale golden light spreads like ripples from the heart-shaped Macintosh potion in the hands of the Lap Wizard. Oh! The irresistible repulsive force carried by the ripples instantly forced Wizard Lap's hand to loosen his grip on the potion, and then his arm was pushed away. Then, the pale golden ripples continued to spread, with strong repulsion, pushing the Lap Wizard away hard and throwing him away. Puff! No! In midair, the Lap Wizard spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with slender threads of flesh, stretched out his hand, and screamed in disbelief and despair. But he has lost the ability to resist. He could only let himself be pushed further away by the golden ripples, and then he fell heavily to the ground like a rag sack. Pale golden ripples. The golden sacred light illuminates the cave hall again. In a daze, a chant like a chant seemed to ring in the ears of the Lap Wizard. Pale golden ripples gathered above Needham's body. Then it turned into dense spots of light, scattered and settled. After melting, Needham formed a black and red flesh and blood mud, which turned into a gilt-like color under the light spots of light gold. Then, it started boiling and flowing like lava. Scatter, spread. The golden liquid seems to be slow but is actually flowing rapidly, soaking the surrounding area and then swallowing it. It seems to be pregnant with something. Wizard Lap looked at the pool of golden liquid that was spreading not far away. My eyes finally regained their clarity. A complicated look could not help but appear on his face, which seemed to be regretful, sudden, and despairing. A long time. Wait until the golden liquid spreads to him. Finally, his lips moved and he sighed slowly. Shen Ming. Then, it was enveloped by the spreading light golden liquid. The slender, bright red flesh strands on his body, like living creatures, emitted an ear-piercing scream, as if they knew disaster was coming. Before losing consciousness, he vaguely heard a euro. In the hall, a grand and cold voice sounded. Lord of Flesh and Thorns. Euro. I have one more question. In the spiritual room in the center of the Macintosh Wizard Tower, Colin held a scepter with dark gold patterns in his hand and turned back to light up the fairway. Why don't you stop the ceremony from taking place? After the light ball flickered for a moment, Erica's confused voice came. The power of God is unimaginable. How could his ritual be destroyed so easily? What's more, after the ceremony started, the tower spirit gave up part of its power, and I was able to take the opportunity to defeat the tower spirit. Quote. Before this, I didn't have any permission from the Wizard Tower. You have not been attacked by the ritual elimination mechanism before, and it is not because I was behind the control. You are lucky. The Macintosh special golden 4-leaf clover you took caused the ceremony to misjudge that you had reached the final step of the ceremony. Therefore, no punishment came. Quote. Colin's face turned gloomy, a little worried. You don't have to worry about other repercussions. As if she knew what he was thinking, Erica added immediately. That golden 4-leaf clover is just an ordinary rare potion. It is an excellent result of Macintosh's early research. A as long as Ida S not during the ceremony, as long as the prerequisite potions are not taken in order, then it is just an ordinary cherished potion It is his power that allows these ordinary things to be combined to create strange effects. So, with such great power, even if I can swallow the tower spirit in advance, I may not be able to stop the ritual. It's just not strong enough. Colin interrupted in a deep voice. He rubbed the storage ring on his index finger that had turned into black lines. Ask the last question. Do you want to come with me? Go back to Ryan. The light blue crystal ball flashed violently. A good while. Only then did the sound come. I can't leave, Colin. The moment I finished devouring the tower spirit, I survived. But he also put on the shackles that originally belonged to the tower spirit. Quote. In order to ensure the success of the ceremony, Macintosh set many restrictions for the tower spirit before his death. Once I leave here, I will be destroyed and there will be no other result. This is a restriction set by the second-level wizard. You are too weak and there is no way to change it. Colin was silent and clenched his fist slightly. Erica also paused. She is not afraid of death. Ghosts have no desire for life, and naturally have no fear of death. But she wants to go home. Leave now, Colin. I release the other apprentices who survived the ceremony to slow down his coming. Before he has fully arrived, I can still fully control the wizard tower, so leave as soon as possible. As her urging words sounded. Click. The stone door behind Colin opened with a sound, revealing the long and deep passage behind it. Colin took a deep look at the light blue crystal ball in the center of the tower chamber and lowered his eyes. "Goodbye, Erica," he whispered. Then he no longer hesitated, exhaled, turned around and ran towards the door. Ta. He left the tower spirit room and ran forward quickly according to Erica's prompts in his heart. "Go through the passage and round the corner. Next time, we have to cross the stone wall in front of us." Colin hit the stone wall as he always did. Boom. But this time, the feeling of falling through the stone wall did not come as usual. It was replaced by the sore and painful feeling of the tip of my nose hitting the wall. He failed to cross the stone wall successfully. "Erica, what's wrong?" Colin's heart suddenly jumped, and he quickly asked in his mind regardless of the pain. Chapter 98 Stupidity. He didn't wait for Erica's response in his heart. But I waited until a majestic sonoration came from nowhere. Like a flute or an orchestra, or like a roaring lion or a whale. In an instant, everything within his field of vision began to change. It was as if the cold breath of winter blew across the calm lake surface, instantly condensing the originally flowing clear lake water and turning it into white frost. Everything in front of him also gradually changed its appearance. Just not ice, but gold. Dazzling gold. As far as the eye can see, everything is gradually turning golden. The rough floor beneath his feet, the gray stone wall in front of him, and even the white glimmer of the crystal above his head were all covered with brilliant gold. The vine-like embossed patterns decorated on the left and right walls turned into continuously flowing golden lava under a certain force. Colin. At this moment, Erica's vague voice finally came through her heart. She explained intermittently. He is using Macintosh, the energy pool of the wizard tower to speed up his arrival. Without energy, I have no way to open the teleportation stone wall of the wizard tower for you. At this point, the sound suddenly stopped again for some unknown reason. Colin's heart suddenly sank, but he no longer had the time to think too much. Because another change occurred in front of him. The liquid-like golden lava that appeared on the stone walls on both sides quietly seemed to be slow in front of him, but in fact it was quickly entangled and gathered. The next moment, a monster that seemed to be made of gold appeared in front of him. The monster is generally human-shaped, but its body is thick, 3 meters tall, and has hard edges and corners like rocks. At the same time, Erica's intermittent and weak voice came again, and she said quickly. "A Euro is coming has entered the second stage, and these are his dependents. A Euro. Take out the crystal ball I gave you to engrave knowledge on. It contains knowledge about the coming of the gods and a structural map of the Macintosh Wizard Tower. The Macintosh Wizarding Tower has been in disrepair for a long time and now has many broken holes. Many of them led to the outside world, respectively." The golden monster waved its huge fist and attacked him. Colin exhaled inaudibly while listening carefully to Erica's words. While holding tightly the scepter with dark golden lines in his hand, he fired a special giant cone bullet. Boom! The cone bomb hit the golden monster's chest hard with a power far greater than that of the apprentice. The monster's seemingly hard body was instantly shattered into half by the cone bullet. Then it exploded and shattered under the attack of more cone bombs, turning into a pool of golden gravel. But it didn't take long for him to be happy. The remains of the golden monster that were originally broken and scattered on the ground turned into flowing lava. It seems that it will be condensed and resurrected again soon. Colin couldn't help but feel nervous. Although with the bonus of the rare items given to him by Erica, the golden monster can be easily solved by him. But it doesn't come without a cost. This scepter is called foolishness. It was the last rare thing that Erica took from Harrington. Strange objects are miraculous objects, often possessing unexplainable and incredible abilities. Of course, there are usually different costs, light or heavy. The Scepter of Folly was originally owned by Macintosh, but was later acquired by the Blackstone family. But as its first owner, Macintosh naturally recorded its detailed use. So under Erica's guidance, Colin quickly mastered the scepter and had a preliminary understanding of it. The effects and costs of the Scepter of Folly are very simple. Its effect is to amplify the effects of witchcraft, which is equivalent to a witchcraft power amplifier. The increased power has no upper limit in theory. But in fact, its price limits the upper limit of its growth. The price of the Scepter of Deception is simple, as its name suggests, it is stupidity. It makes users forget the knowledge they have already mastered. The scope of knowledge includes all. Often, however, forgetfulness begins with the knowledge of the sorcery through which it was cast. Although there are many thoughts in my heart, the reality only passes for a moment. Colin glanced at the golden monster not far away that was about to take shape and be resurrected. Without hesitation, he blessed himself with agility and left quickly. It is obviously not a wise move to consume this kind of immortal monster. But he didn't wait for a few steps. Suddenly a familiar voice came from the road ahead. "Martha, be careful," came Berkeley's voice. Boom. The next moment, a fireball exploded, mixed with the roar of the golden monster. "Thank you, Lord Berkeley," came the female apprentice's grateful voice. "This golden monster has the power of a peak wizard apprentice. Don't get entangled with it and leave quickly." This is the voice of peak apprentice Fina. Colin's expression remained unchanged and he continued to run forward. Soon, the figures of 5 apprentices came into view. Who? Colin's appearance made all the apprentices look at him with suspicion. Colin. Flower on the far right recognized him first and said in surprise, "You also survived." He was filled with doubts. You know, no matter among the 9 remaining people in the second half of the ceremony, or at the end, when they woke up from the nightmare of hunger and followed the guidance in their hearts to escape, Colin was never seen. Colin nodded imperceptibly, not too surprised by their presence. After all, according to Erica Euro's last words, a euro. In order to slow down his coming, she created as much time for him to escape as possible. All the wizard apprentices who survived the ceremony and were supposed to be the fuel for his coming have been released. At this time, the golden monster on the side attacked them again. Roar. Boom. Berkeley ignored his doubts and shot fireballs again to block the golden monster's attack. At the same time he said in a deep voice, "Go quickly." Then he chose the passage on the left without hesitation and ran. The other 4 apprentices did not hesitate and followed closely. The next second, Berkeley glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw Colin still standing there. He paused and turned around and said hurriedly, "Colin, follow me quickly." When Colin heard this, his indifferent expression softened slightly, and his steps towards the right path also stagnated slightly. After a pause, he was about to turn around and call Berkeley and the others. Roar. But in front of Berkeley and others, another golden monster suddenly appeared. Not good. Berkeley's expression changed drastically and he stopped. But before he could come up with a countermeasure. Roar. Another golden monster appeared behind them. No, it's 3 heads, including the original golden monster. A total of 5 golden monsters surrounded them. Each one is at least equivalent to an ordinary peak apprentice. Berkeley and others felt their hearts sinking. After hesitating for a moment, before the golden monster attacked, he said in a deep voice, "Fina, I'll hold them back, you take the other apprentices and leave quickly." After saying this, he paused slightly and said softly, "Find a new place to settle down, and rebuild the lap school if you can. If not, just live well." Quote. After saying that, a trace of confusion flashed across Berkeley's eyes. When they woke up, only the golden liquid that was constantly surging and approaching them was left in the gray-white cave hall. There is nothing else. Under the threat of the approaching golden liquid, they could not think too much and could only follow the instructions in their hearts and flee in panic. But before they could take a breath, they encountered such a desperate situation again. Berkeley. Fina looked at him with a complicated expression. She took a deep breath and moved her lips. "I promise a euro. Sudden. Boom. Before she could finish her words, the golden monster in front of them suddenly exploded. Boom. The next second, the other 4 golden monsters around them also turned into rubble. Berkeley turned around and looked at Colin who was attacking, his expression was inexplicably shocked. "Colin, you." Needham on the side muttered unconsciously. And Fina, who was immersed in emotions and was about to lead everyone to escape desperately, looked even more confused. The originally unbearable life and death crisis actually burst like a bubble. "Those golden monsters will come back to life," Colin said calmly. He had no intention of explaining, but continued concisely. "I know the way out, come with me. Since we met on the road. As a member of the same school, I can help if I can. What's more, what if these firewood in Berkeley who had taken the magic potion were devoured by the gods again? Then wouldn't Erica Euro's previous efforts be in vain? It would be a wise choice to escape with them along the way." Ta. Colin and others ran all the way, and everything they saw was flowing gold that was constantly being eroded. A faint and depressing power accumulated in the air. Colin remained silent, leading everyone to run through the now dazzling golden corridor. Perhaps the golden monsters have been crushed and have not yet been resurrected. They didn't encounter the golden monster again in the second half. Not long after, he came to a gray-white wall that had not yet been dipped in gold. Inside the wall is the room where Macintosh's special golden four-leaf clover was cultivated. It was also the place where he accidentally obtained the golden four-leaf clover. Without hesitation, Colin stood 2 meters away from the stone wall and waved the black scepter with dark gold patterns in his hand. Tang! A huge fireball shot out from the top of the scepter, hitting a huge hole in the wall that had lost energy and caused the defensive witch formation to fail. Then everyone filed in after him and jumped into the pool. Chapter 99 Believers. If you look down at Blackstone Island from a high altitude at this moment, you can find it near the middle of the dark forest to the west of the oval-shaped Black Rock City. A bit of bright gold is quietly spreading to the surface. This is a super aggressive gold color. Even some large trees that were originally dark were gradually dyed into the bright color of gold. In an empty natural cave. Wow! Several figures jumped out of the deepest pool. The unknown god is coming soon. Blackstone Island is not a place to stay for a long time. Run away quickly. Before the other apprentices could react, they realized where this place was. Colin kept walking. After leaving a warning, he quickly walked outside. Aren't you coming with us? Berkeley from behind asked subconsciously. I have other things to do, the voice came from down the wind. Behind him, Berkeley's lips moved, and he looked at Colin's figure disappearing with a complicated expression. He has too many questions to ask. Let's go too. Fina retracted her gaze and said. Nowadays, I don't know exactly what happened. But the top priority is to escape from Blackstone Island first. Berkeley nodded imperceptibly. The group of people walked gradually away. The other side. After Colin identified the direction, he continued running without stopping. The arrival of the gods is like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head. He must hurry up. After running out of the cave, use the suspended cone bomb to determine the direction. A while passed. He came to another small cave entrance located on the southeast side of the cave, hidden behind a huge ancient tree. Here is the cave that Erica entered by mistake. To be cautious, Colin used defensive magic for himself and made sure that the suspended cone bomb could judge the direction normally before walking in. After wandering around the cave for a long time, he discovered Erica's body at a fork in the road. Familiar witch robe, familiar blonde hair. It's just that the witch's robe has been torn, and the blonde hair has turned yellow, it's no longer what it was before. With a slight sigh, he quickly collected Erica's body and put it into the storage ring. At this point, quite a while has passed, and there is no time to delay any longer. Thinking about it now, it was a good thing that he rescued Berkeley and others along the way. Otherwise, if the gods speed up their arrival, he will not have enough time to escape. Turning around, he rushed towards Black Rock City without stopping. His final destination was the dock east of Black Rock City. Planned to go there to find a big ship to leave the island. There is no doubt that Blackstone Island cannot be stayed any longer. Perhaps those civilians could survive because they became believers in the gods. After all, the god who came to the wizard tower this time didn't feel like an evil god, maybe a righteous god. The righteous god is more merciful. You only need to devote your absolute faith and fanatical loyalty, castrate your thoughts, and be as blind and ignorant as a domesticated animal, and you can survive. But the gods usually do not forgive wizards. Even if he could, he would not be bound by the so-called faith and become a foolish believer. The unique dark trees of the Blackstone forest fly by. Not long after, the view in front of him lit up. A golden wheat field appeared in front of me. Colin cheered up, which meant that Black Rock City was not far away. Quickly crossing the wheat fields, he jumped over the city wall and rushed straight to his home in Palm Street. Erica's body has been restrained. But he didn't take the letter she left with him, but kept it at his home on Palm Street. Come all the way. Although there are some dilapidated and collapsed houses on the street, the peace has returned to the same level as before. It seems that no one knows that Lord Price is dead and the Lap School has ceased to exist in name only. A big change is coming again. Colin ran all the way and soon arrived at his home on Palm Street. Walking closer, there was an iron lock on the gray-black door. Rini and the others are out. His face darkened, and he couldn't help but sigh. If possible, He wanted to take Renee and others with him and leave together. The gods hate wizards, and may not be so tolerant of people like Renee who have been transformed by wizards. Ordinary residents on the island may be able to survive by dedicating their faith. But Renee and others are not necessarily so. And ocean voyage is obviously not something that ordinary boats can do. And a big ship, unless it was created by a wizard. Others, obviously, cannot be controlled by one person, and he needs a certain amount of sailors. Even if Renee and others have no sailor experience, they can help him manage the sailors and free up time. However, now is the time to race against time. All I can say is, it's a pity. But thinking of this, Colin suddenly felt something in his heart. Inexplicably, he remembered that when he left before, he had ordered Renee to go to the east dock of the city to buy himself a ship that could sail across the ocean. Could it be? He shook his head and thought no more, leaping from the courtyard wall into his home. Anyway, we LL find out later when we go to the east of the city. Come to the familiar bedroom on the second floor. Colin quickly found the brown envelope with a red and blue intertwined lacquer seal from a dark red wooden cabinet beside the bed. Put it into the storage ring, quickly scanned it around, and collected some knowledge that might be useful. He stopped staying and turned around to leave. Another moment passed. Wow, the sound of waves crashing against the rocks could be heard in my ears. It seems that you can also smell the unique sea breeze on the tip of your nose. Colin kept walking and exhaled slightly. The east side of the city is not far away. As the distance gets closer, the sound of the waves gradually becomes louder. Finally, after crossing the gray-black city wall, a flash of blue appeared in front of Colin's eyes. The long golden beach extends out to many long piers. At the end of these old but sturdy piers, there are all kinds of ships, large and small, moored. Unlike when the caravan arrived, the place looked deserted and had been cleared. Now there are not only many fish stalls set up here, but also many boats floating on the sea level in the distance. That's a boat fishing offshore. But as far as he could see, his familiar black carriage was not there. There was no sign of Berkeley and others, perhaps they had already left by boat. At this time, a golden ripple visible to the naked eye suddenly spread rapidly. Let the aura of humanity and knowledge ripple across Colin's body. But unlike him, the people swept by the golden ripple stopped and stood frozen in place. If it weren't for the unlucky white seabird spinning and falling into the sea in the distance, causing a splash, Colin almost felt like time was frozen in golden light. The next moment, the frozen crowd started to move again. Among them, some people who originally looked normal suddenly showed inexplicable fanaticism on their faces. He kept mumbling incomprehensible words. Most of these people are thin and weak-willed. They kept mumbling, and the fog of their souls became weaker and weaker. And other people who are in better health are not much better. At this time, confusion appeared in their eyes and their movements were slow. Colin's heart tightened, and he quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for a suitable ship. This is clearly a case where he is forcibly creating believers for himself. The human spirit is extremely weak. The gods of this world will never ask for faith from humans. He will take it. When the fog surrounding these people's souls dissipates, they will all become his loyal and devout followers. But not until he found a suitable ship. Chaos broke out first. You sinful infidel. Believe in my Lord. Those people who became believers in the first step invariably used words or actions to force people around them to abandon their inner perseverance. At this time, Wizard, the evil wizard, an old fisherman next to Colin, who was carrying a bucket full of fish, suddenly pointed at him and shouted. The endless enthusiasm in his eyes replaced the joy of the previous harvest. The wooden barrel containing the harvest he had worked so hard for a day overturned to the ground due to his actions, and the fish were scattered all over the ground. But he didn't care at all. Followed by his shout. More and more people around Colin turned to look at him. You evil wizard. Unbelievers. Go to hell. Devil. Colin looked calm and showed no reaction to their shouts. Under the influence of Hope's specially expanded defensive force field, these people could not even get closer than 2 meters to him. He glanced around, looking at the fanatical crowd blocked by Hope's defensive force field. It's like they were thrown into a fixed mold, modified and extruded. Although they look different, have different bodies, and dress differently. But there was exactly the same enthusiasm in his eyes. Pooh. Someone spat at him. Boom. Someone threw something at him. Evil wizard. Some people scolded him angrily. These things are isolated by Hope's defensive force field. But for some reason, Colin felt an emotion as hot and painful as lava welling up in his heart. He took a small breath. The tiny muscles start to pull and exert force from the corners of the lips, then to the cheeks and the base of the ears. An angry smile appeared on his face. This was a strong emotion that he had never experienced since he came to this world. Ha God. He shook his head and said the same words as Wizard Lap before he died. As if stimulated by the irony in his tone, the enthusiastic crowd hesitated at first. Then it was as if hot water was boiling and suddenly exploded. In this noisy moment, owner, a familiar voice reached his ears. Colin looked up. On the middle deck of a three-masted sailboat at the dock not far away, Renee was holding Demi's hand and waving to him. Master. Renee saw him looking over and shouted again. When Colin saw this, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He smiled slightly, then calmed down the emotions on his face and regained his calm appearance. Boom. Under his control, Hope's force field turned into an active repellent force field, opening a passage through the crowd to Renee's sailboat. He took a step, then paused. He turned around and looked behind him to the west of the city. Until the golden color that is already visible to the naked eye is firmly engraved in my mind. Then he turned around and ran towards the sailboat where Renee was. Chapter 100 Set sail. Weigh anchor. Ding, ding, ding a euro. On the three-masted sailboat, 4 strong men pushed the wooden winch, and the heavy iron chain was recovered and entangled, making a clanging sound between collisions. After a while, the heavy anchor rose from the bottom of the sea. Then, the three-masted sailboat gradually started to move. Colin stood on the raised stern of the boat, staring at the crowded wooden pier not far away, watching it gradually get further away. Those fanatical crowds crowded the pier nearest to him, as well as the surrounding piers and beaches. At this moment, he was reaching out to him emotionally, shouting something in his mouth. What's more, they even jumped out of the sea and swam desperately towards him. If you ignore the ferocious face, it feels like you are sending him off, but also like a reluctant farewell. As the sailboat continued to move forward, the distance became wider. The debris and stones thrown by the crowd could no longer touch the retreating ship. He waved the scepter of folly and removed the expanded defense field of hope. As the understanding of witchcraft becomes deeper and deeper, there will be more and more changes that wizards can use. But now, with the blessing of the scepter of stupidity, the once limited hope defense field, which has been upgraded to the official wizard's power, has even more uses. Before that, he could not expand Hope's defensive force field to such a large range. He withdrew his gaze, turned around and walked towards the middle of the ship, no longer looking at the fanatical crowd at the pier in the distance. Not far away, Renee was throwing the bodies of several sailors off the sailboat. Colin looked calm. In my mind, I could see the sailors frantically blocking the sailing ship. They have turned against the gods. Is his enemy. Fortunately, after the remaining crew members left the island, they gradually recovered from their confused expressions, and the mental fog on their bodies stopped dissipating and returned to stability. He breathed out the gold paper as he walked toward Renee. Above, the progress of Hope's defensive force field was as he expected, without much change. The cost of using the rod of folly to cast sorcery is the loss of knowledge. But under the influence of gold paper, he can cast witchcraft, which will increase his knowledge. The two obviously cancel each other out. Specifically, more growth or more forgetting. Mainly depends on how strong you want the increase to be. At least the witchcraft such as Hope's defensive force field, which was the peak power of the apprenticeship, was upgraded to the intensity of ordinary witchcraft cast by ordinary formal wizards. The knowledge forgotten is not much, and it is still within the acceptable range. But it still needs to be used with caution. Colin warned himself secretly. Within a certain range of amplification intensity, the scepter of folly will give priority to forgetting the relevant knowledge of the witchcraft it casts. If it exceeds this range, that would not only mean completely forgetting the witchcraft just cast, but also randomly forgetting any knowledge. The scope of this arbitrary knowledge includes not only witchcraft knowledge, but also any other knowledge, even concepts, cognitions. For wizards, certain important concepts and cognitions have been forgotten in this world. Not only may it lead to confusion in the underlying logic and collapse of 3 perspectives. It will even cause the aura of humanity and knowledge to collapse, leading to being polluted and alienated by oneself. Master. Renee greeted him respectfully when she saw him coming. Colin nodded slightly. With a thought, the scepter with dark gold patterns dissipated and turned into golden patterns attached to his right arm. He looked over Renee. The blonde girl is still as delicate and beautiful as before. At this moment, under his gaze, she stroked the blonde hair beside her ear uncomfortably. Colin's face was calm, as if he suddenly thought of something. He asked again. Where's Arthur? Why didn't you see him? Renee shook her head and replied. Master, Arthur sent Demi and I to the east dock of the city before. After making an appointment to pick us up in the evening, he left alone again. I don't know where I went. Colin paused and nodded slightly. No wonder I didn't see my familiar carriage on the beach before. As for where Arthur went, he also knew it well. A euro. It's nothing more than a tavern, or a brothel. Although he did not restrain his slaves too much, he still knew their whereabouts. Renee usually stays at home, either trying to develop new dishes, practicing her cooking skills, or playing with Demi. As for Arthur, perhaps because he had a monthly salary, he would go to the tavern occasionally. Colin knew all this and didn't care. Anyway, just make sure you do your job well and don't cause trouble for him. It's a pity that now. Colin. At this time, a shout suddenly came from the distance. Colin raised his eyes and saw a three-masted sailboat on the sea not far away. At this moment, Berkeley and others were standing on the deck looking at him. A euro. The originally spacious captain's cabin of the three-masted sailing ship. At this time, it seemed a bit crowded because it was packed with apprentices. So, everything is just a plan of the gods. Berkeley at the front murmured bitterly. The voice was inexplicably dry. The other apprentices were also silent, with undisguised shock and confusion on their faces. Colin nodded slightly, waiting for them to digest the information. Silence fell in the captain's room. A long time. Berkeley spoke first to break the silence. What are your plans next? The complex look on his face had completely subsided. Now it has returned to its former calm appearance. Even more determined than before. Colin looked at Berkeley, a little surprised. He thought Berkeley would be the last to recover. After all, a euro. Among the apprentices present, he is undoubtedly the one who has the deepest feelings for Lap wizards and the Lap school. Unexpectedly, when Fina and others heard Berkeley's question, they frowned subconsciously, with a bit of confusion on their faces. Berkeley looked around, his eyes fell on Colin in front of him. He paused and asked. Colin, Your Excellency, what are your plans next? Hearing his name, Colin couldn't help but froze for a moment, feeling a little dazed. For some reason, he recalled inexplicably the time when he traded arrow shooting skills at the guard station in the center of Black Rock City. The memory is still very clear. It seems that not long ago. It seems to have been a long and blurry time. Outside the window, seabirds chirped and the waves rippled. As far as the eye can see, there is no shadow of Blackstone Island. After a moment of silence, he replied. Buchanan Island. I plan to go to Buchanan Island. Berkeley was startled and said. Buchanan Island isn't close to here. Colin nodded slightly, paused and asked. What about you? Berkeley. Your Excellency. I plan to go to Morley Island. Berkeley said slowly. He looked around the crowd and asked again. What about you? I want to continue to follow you, Mr. Berkeley. Martha spoke first. I'll go with you too. Fina followed. I'll go to Morley Island too. Flower hesitated and then agreed. Compared to Bananka Island, Morley Island is closer and requires less time to sail at sea. It also means safer. Although Colin in front of him had shown great strength before. But putting your own safety in the hands of others is obviously a fool's errand. What's more, he would rather trust the more familiar Berkeley than Colin. Colin was silent. I had already expected this result. It's just inevitable that there will be some parting sadness. But this time, Lord Colin, I want to go to Bananka Island with you. The last thin male wizard, Murray, suddenly spoke. Beside him, Berkeley frowned and moved his lips, as if he wanted to say something, but remained silent in the end. Okay. Colin glanced up at Murray and said calmly. Next. After talking for a while again, the four people in Berkeley got up and prepared to leave. Colin sent them to the deck. The sea breeze came to my face and blew my hair. Flower looked at him with a complicated expression, and finally sighed. I wish you safe sailing, Lord Colin. Colin thanked him back. Unknowingly, he had become accustomed to the new names and respect given to him by Flower and others. Fina and Martha also came forward to say goodbye to him. He also returned blessings one by one. Finally, Berkeley approached. I wish you a safe voyage, Sir Colin. He also wished him the same. Then he glanced at Murray standing not far away and sighed. I hope it's not what I thought. The Colin in front of him was only an intermediate wizard apprentice before the ceremony. But the witchcraft released now has reached the level of a formal wizard. Everyone knows that Colin must have an adventure. But not everyone can restrain greed. He glanced at Colin again, then turned around to join Fina and others, and flew towards their three-masted sailboat not far away. Colin watched as Huo and the others' figures gradually faded away, turning into small dots, and finally landed on the deck of the three-masted sailboat. After retracting his gaze, he turned his head and glanced at Murray, who was standing aside, then turned around and walked towards the captain's cabin. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.